You know that strange feeling that hits you at the end of the day, when the house is finally quiet and your brain refuses to turn off? Your body is exhausted, but your mind is still running old conversations, regrets, what-ifs, and imaginary arguments on loop. You lie there thinking, why am I so tired when I didn't even do that much today? The paradox is, it's rarely the things you did that drained you. It's the way you carried yourself through them. And that has everything to do with karma and conduct. Not in a mystical way, but in the most practical way possible. Because the way you live inside your own day is quietly shaping the way your day lives inside of you. Karma is one of the most misunderstood words in the world. For some people, it's a kind of cosmic revenge. They'll get what's coming. For others, it's a spiritual way of saying, well, life just sucks, and that's my karma. But the Buddha never taught karma as punishment or fate written in stone. He taught it as something much more empowering and, honestly, more confronting. You are constantly planting seeds with your thoughts, words, and actions, and they grow. Here's the counterintuitive part. You don't need to become more spiritual to change your karma. You don't need a robe, a cave, or a perfect mind that never gets distracted. What you need is something much simpler and more demanding. Awareness of the small choices you make all day. How you answer a message. How you speak to your own heart. How you eat your lunch. How you react when someone cuts you off. These tiny moves, repeated thousands of times, are what make your life feel heavy, or light, chaotic, or peaceful. By the end of this journey together, you'll see exactly how to shape them in your favor. In this video, we're going to walk slowly and deeply through Buddhist teachings on karma and conduct, but not as dry philosophy or quotes to post online and forget tomorrow. We'll explore them as a living map for your real life, your anxiety, your relationships, your habits, your burnout. I'll share stories, down-to-earth analogies, and very human experiences, including the messy ones. At every step, I want you to be able to think, that's me, I do that, I felt exactly that. Because when you recognize yourself in these teachings, they stop being theory and start becoming medicine. We'll talk honestly about why you sabotage your own peace even when you say you want calm. Why you keep repeating the same patterns in love, work, and family, even when you swear you're done with this. We'll see how greed, fear, and confusion quietly drive your decisions without asking your permission. But we'll also see how compassion, wisdom, and balance are not distant ideals. They're muscles you can train. Step by step, we'll turn karma from something that happens to you into something you consciously participate in. Not perfectly, not instantly, but in a way you can actually feel in your chest and in your daily routines. The reward is not some distant enlightenment in another lifetime that you'll never remember. The reward is that, even before this video ends, you may start to breathe differently inside your own life. You may notice patterns you've never seen and feel the first real taste of freedom from them. You may discover that balance isn't about doing less or more, but about relating differently to what you already do. And you may realize, quietly and clearly, that you're not as stuck as you've been telling yourself. The door out of your old karma has been in the same place the whole time, right here, in this next conscious choice. So find a position that feels kind to your body. Lying down, sitting back, wrapped in a blanket if you want. Let this be your time, not to escape your life, but to finally meet it with new eyes. You don't need to agree with everything. You just need to stay curious and honest with yourself. For the next few hours, We'll walk side by side through the garden of your actions, intentions, and habits. And we'll see together how, with patience and clarity, you can start planting different seeds than the ones that are hurting you now. When you're ready, let's begin this journey into karma, conduct, and the art of living with balance. Karma is one of those words people use all the time, but almost nobody really understands. You hear, "That's karma," when something bad happens, as if the universe were some vengeful judge handing out punishments. But in the Buddhist view, karma is much simpler and much more compassionate than that. Karma just means action. Everything you think, say, and do. Each action carries a certain energy, and that energy leaves a trace in your mind and in your life. You're not being watched by a cosmic policeman. You're living inside the consequences of your own habits. Think of karma less like a court and more like gravity. If you step off a roof, gravity doesn't punish you. It just does what it does. In the same way, when you act from anger, fear, or greed, those states shape your inner world, and sooner or later you feel the weight of them. When you act from kindness, honesty, and clarity, those states also shape your inner world, and you feel the lightness that comes with them. Karma is this natural chain of cause and effect playing out in your body, your mind, and your relationships. No moral scoreboard, just laws as steady as the sunrise. The Buddha described this in a very direct way. We are what we think. All that we are arises with our thoughts. That means karma starts long before a visible action happens. It begins in the small stories you tell yourself every day. I'm not enough. Nobody cares about me. Everything always da errado for me. Those stories generate emotions, and those emotions generate choices, and soon your outer life starts to look suspiciously similar to your inner narrative. Imagine your mind as a garden that is always being planted. Every thought is a seed. Every word is a drop of water. Every action is sunlight or shadow. You don't plant one thought of resentment and instantly get a forest of problems the next day. It doesn't work that dramatically, but if you keep watering resentment, keep talking from resentment, keep acting from resentment, your garden will become a place where peace struggles to grow. Karma is this long-term gardening of the soul. Most people only notice karma when the fruit appears. A breakup, a burnout, a constant feeling of emptiness. They say, "Why is this happening to me?" And it sounds like bad luck. But karma asks a softer, more honest question. What have I been planting? Maybe without realizing it? That doesn't mean you're to blame for everything that happens, because the world is complex and full of other people's actions too. It just means your inner patterns are not innocent bystanders. They are active forces in the way you experience life. Let me share something personal to make this less abstract. There was a period in my life when I was always defensive. Any criticism felt like an attack, and I would either argue or shut down completely. I blamed the people around me for not knowing how to talk. But the truth is, the real war was happening inside my chest. My karma wasn't some curse from outside. It was the habit of feeling threatened all the time. Only when I started to see this pattern clearly did my relationships begin to soften. You have patterns like that too, whether you see them or not. Maybe you always say yes when you want to say no, and then end up resentido. Maybe you sabotage good opportunities because a voice inside tells you you're not ready or worthy. Maybe you run from intimacy because the idea of being truly seen terrifies you. None of these patterns make you a bad person. They just reveal the kind of karmic tracks your mind has been running on for years. Here's the empowering part. Karma is not a fixed sentence. It's a living system. It's not, you did something bad, now you must suffer forever. It's more like, you've been taking this road for a long time. Are you sure you still want to go in that direction? The moment you change direction, even slightly, karma begins to reorganize. Old seeds may still sprout for a while, but new seeds are already in the ground. That's why a single sincere decision can silently start changing a whole future. To work with karma in a practical way, you don't need to memorize long lists or adopt a new religion. You just need to start paying attention to 3 simple things: your thoughts, your words, and your actions. Before thinking, "I'm worthless," ask, "Is this really true? Or just a very old habit?" Before speaking, ask, "Is what I'm about to say going to create more peace or more pain?" Before acting, ask, "What kind of result am I planting here?" These tiny pauses are how new karma is born. Think of it like this. Every day you're writing a page in the book of your life. Karma is not the book destiny wrote for you. It's the book you're co-writing with your choices. You can't erase past chapters, but you can change the style of the next ones. If old chapters were full of fear, the next one can include courage. If old chapters repeated the same toxic relationship, the next one can show you setting a boundary for the first time. That shift in the storyline is karmic evolution. Your body is an honest translator of your karma. Before life punishes you on the outside, your body whispers warnings on the inside, that knot in the stomach every time you lie, the tightness in the jaw when you hold back your truth, the exhaustion of pretending to be someone you're not. These are not random sensations. They are feedback. They are karma speaking through the only language it has, your lived experience. One of the most useful practices you can try is simply noticing how you feel after different actions. After you gossip, how does your chest feel? After you're generous with someone, even in a small way, how does your face feel? After you scroll mindlessly for an hour, what is the quality of your mind? This is not moralism, it's data. You're studying your own karma like a scientist, using your body and mind as the laboratory. The good news is that wholesome karma doesn't need to be dramatic to be powerful. You don't need to become a monk or give away everything you own. You can start with micro-choices, answering with patience when you'd usually snap, listening fully when you'd usually interrupt, putting your phone down when you'd usually escape your feelings. These actions look small from the outside, but inside, they are massive energetic shifts. They change how you relate to yourself. If you've made a lot of mistakes, and who hasn't, you might fear that your karma is too dirty to fix. But the Buddha spoke to murderers, thieves, and people buried in guilt, and he never said, "It's too late for you." He said, in essence, you were heedless before. Now, be heedful. In other words, the moment you start acting with awareness, you are already changing the story. The past is gone. The direction of your next step is what matters most now. So, karma is not here to scare you. It's here to wake you up, to show you that your life is not just happening to you. It is also happening from you. Your patterns, your reactions, your choices, your repeated thoughts, they all play a role in the movie you're living inside. When you see that clearly, you stop feeling like a powerless victim of fate. You begin to feel like a gardener, finally noticing the tools in your hands. And once you see yourself as a gardener, a new question appears almost automatically. If my life is a garden of causes and effects, what exactly am I planting every single day, often without realizing it? That is where our journey naturally moves next, into the world of seeds, habits, and the subtle ways cause and effect are shaping your inner landscape all the time. If your life is a garden, then every day you are walking around with a handful of seeds, dropping them without even noticing. A look of impatience at someone who's slow. A quiet act of kindness nobody sees. A thought of jealousy you keep just in your head because you think it doesn't matter. But the truth is, everything matters. Not in a guilt-inducing way, but in a deeply empowering way. Because once you see that you're planting all the time, you can become intentional about what grows. We tend to look at big events and call them fate or luck, but they're often the harvest of countless little choices. You don't burn out from one long day. You burn out from years of ignoring your limits. You don't suddenly become bitter from one disappointment. You become bitter from feeding the same story again and again. Karma is patient. It doesn't rush the process. It lets the seeds you nourish take root at their own pace, and then gently shows you what you've been growing. Think about a simple example. The way you start your morning. If you wake up, immediately grab your phone, scroll through drama and bad news, then rush into the day already late. You've just planted seeds of agitation and scarcity. You might say, it's just a habit. But that habit has consequences. Not as a punishment, but as a predictable outcome. If you pour coffee into a glass, you don't get surprised when coffee comes out. Karma works with the same boring, reliable honesty. Now, imagine a different morning. You wake up, take 3 slow breaths before touching anything, and simply notice how your body feels. Maybe you stretch for 2 minutes or drink water mindfully before checking the outside world. These are tiny actions, almost invisible from the outside, but inside you just planted seeds of presence, respect, and care. The day will still bring challenges, of course, but your inner soil will receive those challenges in a very different way. We often underestimate small actions because we're addicted to dramatic change. We want the before and after story, the big breakthrough, the viral moment. But the mind doesn't truly transform through drama. It transforms through repetition. It doesn't care what's spectacular. It cares what's consistent. If you consistently plant seeds of self-criticism, you get a tree of insecurity. If you consistently plant seeds of curiosity and kindness toward yourself, you get a tree of inner safety. One powerful practice is to see each interaction as a seed. When you talk to a cashier, are you planting impatience or respect? When a family member makes a mistake, are you planting shame or understanding? You don't have to be perfect or fake nice. You just need to notice, what am I putting into the soil of this relationship right now? Because one day, that soil will grow into a very real atmosphere you both have to breathe. I once met a man who complained constantly that everyone is rude. So I started watching how he treated people. He cut them off mid-sentence, rolled his eyes, answered with heavy sighs. Without knowing, he was planting irritation in every field he walked through. Of course, it grew back in his direction. His life wasn't cursed. It was consistent. When he finally realized this, it was painful at first. Then, it became incredibly freeing. If the pattern comes from me, then I can also help change it. Karma is not just about what you do, but also about what you tolerate from yourself. Every time you let a destructive thought pass through your mind unchecked, you're basically watering a weed. I'm hopeless. I'm ugly. I'll never change. These sentences seem small, but spoken repeatedly inside, they create a climate. And in that climate, certain experiences thrive. Self-sabotage, toxic relationships, giving up before you even try. Tending to your mental garden means learning to stop watering these weeds. That doesn't mean you have to fight every negative thought. Fighting sometimes feeds it more. Instead, you can acknowledge it gently and plant a different seed right next to it. I feel hopeless right now, and I'm still willing to try one small thing today. That "and" is a seed. That willingness is a seed. Over time, those new seeds can grow into trees strong enough to cast shade over old patterns until they slowly lose power and dry out on their own. Look also at the seeds you inherited. Some of your fears, beliefs, and habits didn't start with you. Maybe you grew up watching people explode instead of communicate. So now anger feels like the only tool in the box. Maybe nobody in your house rested, so exhaustion became normal. These are ancestral seeds, cultural seeds. Karma doesn't blame you for them, but it does ask, will you keep planting the same ones, or will you be the one who chooses differently? Being the one who chooses differently doesn't mean rejecting your past or hating your family. It means honoring their struggle and saying, the pain can stop here. If everyone before you planted seeds of scarcity, maybe you start planting seeds of enough. If everyone before you planted silence around emotions, maybe you start planting honest conversations. You become the gardener who introduces new life into old soil. That is spiritual courage in action. You can even turn everyday tasks into karmic planting. Washing dishes can become a moment to practice gratitude instead of resentment. Commuting can become a time to listen to teachings or sit with your breath instead of only feeding anxiety with music and news that agitate you. Walking your dog can become a mindfulness practice where you feel your steps instead of disappearing into your head. The action is the same. The seed changes when the intention changes. A very practical way to work with this is to choose one seed word for your day. Maybe today your word is gentle. Throughout the day, you ask, what would a gentle version of this action look like? Gentle email, gentle self-talk, gentle tone. Tomorrow your word might be clear. Then you plant clarity in how you speak and decide. These words are like packets of seeds you carry in your pocket. The more you remember them, the more they shape the energy of the day. Over weeks and months, these small, intentional plantings begin to show up as real, tangible changes. You notice that certain conflicts happen less often. Your body feels slightly less tense. Moments of peace appear in places that used to be chaotic. People respond differently to you without knowing exactly why. From the outside, it may look like things finally started working out. But on the inside, you know. You changed the seeds, so the harvest had to change too. Of course, not everything that happens to you is the result of your personal planting. There are storms you didn't cause, social injustices you didn't design, accidents that arise from many people's actions colliding. Karma doesn't say, you created every detail of your pain. It says, whatever arrives, you still have seeds in your hands. You still get to choose how you respond, what you grow from here, what kind of person you become in the middle of it all. When you start seeing life this way, cause and effect stop being abstract ideas and become intimate. You realize that you're never truly powerless as long as you can plant one more seed, choose one more thought, speak one more word with awareness. And that naturally leads to a deeper question that changes everything. If the seeds are always in my hands, what kind of inner gardener do I want to become from now on? We live in a world that worships perfection, perfect bodies, perfect routines, perfect morning rituals, perfect spiritual practices, perfect productivity, perfect feeds. Everywhere you look, it seems like everyone else has already figured it out. And when you compare your real, messy life to those polished images, it's easy to feel like you're always behind, always failing, always late for some invisible deadline. Buddhism, however, is not interested in your performance. It's interested in your intention. Not how perfect you look on the outside, but what direction your heart is quietly pointing on the inside. Intention is the why behind your actions. Two people can do exactly the same thing. Meditate for 20 minutes, donate money, say, "I love you," help a friend, and still be creating very different karma, because what's happening in their hearts is not the same. One meditates to impress others, to look spiritual, to feel superior. The other meditates to understand the mind and ease suffering. On the outside, the scene is identical. A person sitting still. On the inside, the energetic trace is completely different. Karma always listens more to intention than to appearance. Think about a simple apology. You can say, "I'm sorry," just to shut down an argument, without really caring, and your body knows it's fake. There's tightness in your chest, resistance in your throat, a part of you rolling its eyes inside. Or you can say, "I'm sorry," with genuine regret and a true wish to repair. In both cases, the sentence has the same length and grammar, but the karmic impact is night and day. The first apology plants seeds of more resentment. The second plants seeds of healing. The difference is not in the words, it's in the intention driving them. I once tried to build a perfect meditation practice. I set strict rules: exact time, exact posture, exact length, no movement, no stray thoughts allowed. Every day I sat like a statue, not because I was deeply present, but because I wanted to be good at meditating. And do you know what happened? My ego got stronger, not weaker. I started judging myself on performance. I judged others too. They're not as serious as I am. My practice was technically correct, but karmically off. The intention was comparison, not compassion, and my mind became more rigid instead of more free. Eventually, a teacher told me something I will never forget. Better one honest breath than an hour of pretending. That sentence broke something open in me. I started to see that the real practice is not about looking calm, holy, or advanced. It's about being sincere with what is actually happening right now. Some days, I sit and feel peaceful. Other days, I sit and feel like a storm. But when my intention is simply, "Let me meet this moment with honesty," that honesty itself becomes medicine. Even when my mind is chaotic, the intention to be present is quietly transforming the way karma is created. Intention over perfection also means you don't have to wait to be ready to start. Many people postpone change because they believe they must first fix everything inside. When I'm less anxious, I'll meditate. When I'm less angry, I'll be kind. When I heal my past, I'll open my heart. But healing doesn't happen before you begin. It happens because you begin. Your intention to move toward balance, even with shaking knees and a noisy mind, already shifts your direction. The compass doesn't need you to walk perfectly straight. It just needs you to keep re-aiming toward what matters. Let's take a very practical example. Speaking kindly. You might decide, "From now on, I want my words to reduce suffering, not increase it." That's your intention. Will you fail sometimes? Absolutely. You'll still snap when you're tired, still say things you regret, still gossip when you feel insecure. But every time you remember your intention and realign with it, you are bending your karmic path slightly toward more clarity and care. Perfection would say, "You failed, give up." Intention says, "You slipped, come back. One closes the path, the other keeps it open. When you focus on perfection, you become obsessed with results. Did I meditate properly? Did I do enough? Did I react the right way? This mindset is full of anxiety because every action becomes a test you can fail. When you focus on intention, you become more curious than judgmental. What was I really trying to do? Was I acting from fear or from wisdom? What did I learn about myself here? This mindset is fertile soil for growth. It allows your mistakes to become teachers instead of proof that you're broken. Buddhist teachings often compare intention to the handle of a tool. If you hold the tool wrongly, you can hurt yourself, even if it's a beautiful, sharp, expensive object. But if you hold it with skill and care, the same tool can create something wonderful. Meditation, kindness, discipline, honesty. All of these are spiritual tools. Used with the intention to control, dominate, or impress, they create more suffering. Used with the intention to understand, to free, to love, they clear the mind and soften the heart. The tool is neutral. The intention that holds it is everything. Take your spiritual curiosity as an example. You're watching a long video, listening to teachings about karma and conduct. Why? If your secret intention is, I want a shortcut to avoid all discomfort in life forever, you'll end up frustrated, hopping from teacher to teacher, never satisfied. But if your intention is, I want to understand myself better, so I cause less harm and live with more peace, then even a single sentence can change the quality of your day. The same content, the same words, the same voice, but two completely different karmic journeys depending on the intention you bring. Intention also changes how you relate to your past. If your intention is to prove you were always right, you'll rewrite memories in your favor, blame everyone else, and stay stuck. But if your intention is to grow, you'll look at the same memories and ask, what can I learn here? Where did I abandon myself? What pattern do I keep repeating? This doesn't erase what happened, but it transforms your relationship with it. Your past stops being a prison and becomes a library, a place where you go not to suffer again, but to understand more deeply. Even your body feels the difference between perfection and intention. Perfection tightens the jaw, tenses the shoulders, and makes the breath shallow. It's like living inside a constant exam. Intention relaxes the chest, softens the gaze, and allows deeper breaths, even when you're working hard. It's like shifting from, I must get this right or else, to, I'm doing this to walk closer to who I really am. The outer effort might look similar, but the inner experience is radically kinder, and that kindness itself becomes wholesome karma. You can practice this in very small ways. When you sit down to eat, instead of aiming for a perfect meal with flawless nutrition and zero guilt, set a gentle intention. May this food support my clarity and strength. When you send a message to someone, instead of overthinking the perfect sentence, set the intention. May my words be honest and kind. When you lie down to sleep, instead of replaying all your mistakes, whisper, today I did the best I knew how. Tomorrow, may I do a little better. Nothing dramatic, just a steady, quiet reorientation of the heart. Of course, your mind will sometimes say, but what if my intention is selfish? What if I don't even know what my intention is? That's okay. You don't need to pretend your motives are pure when they're not. In fact, lying to yourself about your intentions creates more confusion. Instead, you can practice radical honesty. Part of me wants to help, and part of me wants to be praised for helping. Fine. See it. Name it. The moment you acknowledge mixed intentions, you create space for the wiser part to grow stronger over time. Little by little, this honest attention to intention starts to change your automatic responses. You notice that some habits no longer feel right because they contradict your deeper aim. You feel it in your body when you're about to say something unkind. You sense it when you're about to abandon yourself again. That moment of sensing, of catching yourself, is precious. It's the doorway where new karma can be born. You may still fall through the old door at times, but you now know there is another one. And that awareness alone is a quiet revolution. And the more you live from intention instead of perfection, the more you start to notice something else. Your inner world is not the only thing being affected. The people around you begin to respond differently. Your relationships shift in tone. Your reactions change the emotional weather in the room. You start to see that intention doesn't just shape your private karma. It shapes the living field between you and everyone who crosses your path. And that naturally leads to the next question. If my inner intentions are constantly leaking into my relationships, like colors bleeding into water, how exactly is my karma being reflected back to me in the people I attract, the conflicts I face, and the bonds I create every single day? Relationships can feel like blessings or like battles, but in Buddhist understanding, they are always mirrors, not perfect mirrors, not literal ones, but reflective surfaces that show you parts of yourself you might never see on your own. The friend who always talks over you, the partner who shuts down emotionally, the colleague who criticizes everything you do. It's easy to point the finger outward and say, they are the problem. But karma whispers a more uncomfortable, powerful question. What in me is being reflected here? And what can I learn from it? This doesn't mean other people are innocent angels and you're to blame for everything. That's not the point. It means that your reactions, patterns, and choices are part of the equation, and relationships reveal them in high definition. For example, if you feel invisible in every group you join, that's not just bad luck. It might be showing you a karmic habit of shrinking, apologizing for existing, or choosing people who never learned how to listen. The repetition of the pattern is not a cosmic curse. It's life turning up the volume so you finally hear what needs attention inside you. Think about someone who constantly feels disrespected everywhere they go. One explanation is, people are terrible. But if we look through the lens of karma, we're invited to ask, do I respect myself? Do I set clear boundaries? Do I speak up when something crosses the line? Often, the answer is no. Their external world mirrors their internal permission. When you tolerate disrespect from yourself, in your own thoughts, in your own decisions, it becomes easier to tolerate it from others. Life is not punishing you. It's reflecting your current level of self-regard. I remember a time when I attracted the same type of friendship over and over again. People who were charming, intense, and then suddenly distant. I would feel abandoned, rejected, convinced something was wrong with me. Only later did I realize I had a karmic pattern of choosing intensity over consistency, drama over stability, because that chaos felt familiar. Deep down, a calm, steady relationship felt boring to my nervous system. My karma wasn't that people left me. My karma was that I kept inviting the same movie into my life, again and again. Buddhism doesn't ask you to stay in harmful relationships just to learn lessons. It asks you to see the lessons clearly and then respond wisely. If a relationship constantly triggers your anger, you have two levels of practice. The inner level, understanding your anger, your unmet needs, your wounds. The outer level, deciding whether to stay set boundaries, seek help, or walk away. Karma is not about passively accepting everything. It's about actively transforming the way you participate in patterns, so you stop feeding what hurts and start feeding what heals. Think of every interaction as a kind of emotional echo. When someone speaks harshly and you respond with harshness, the echo grows louder and louder. That's karmic reinforcement, both of you feeding the same painful pattern. But if someone speaks harshly and you respond with calm clarity, not weakness, not submission, but calm, the echo changes shape. The pattern doesn't get the same fuel. Sometimes the other person will double down. Sometimes they'll soften. Either way, your karma shifts because you refuse to throw the same stone back into the same pond. This doesn't mean you must be a saint in every conversation. You're human. You will snap, raise your voice, say things you regret, but even those messy moments are mirrors. After a conflict, instead of only replaying what the other person said, try replaying your own body's signals. When did your heart rate spike? When did your throat tighten? When did you stop listening and start defending? That is where your spiritual work lives. Those are the exact places where new karma can be grown, simply by becoming more aware, breath by breath. One of the most powerful questions you can ask yourself in any relationship is, who do I become around this person? Do you become small, anxious, loud, controlling, relaxed, creative, compassionate, or numb? The answer doesn't just describe them. It describes the karmic interaction between your two inner worlds. Sometimes, the mirror shows you your strength. People who bring out your wisdom, your courage, your generosity. Other times, the mirror shows you your unhealed parts. People who awaken jealousy, fear, or old childhood dynamics. And here is where choice enters. When you see clearly that a relationship consistently brings out the worst in you, you can either blame the mirror or work with the reflection. Working with it might mean doing inner healing, therapy, spiritual practice, honest communication, or it might mean stepping away. If every time you look in a certain mirror, you start hating yourself, at some point, wisdom says, I don't have to keep standing here. Karma doesn't require you to endure environments that crush your growth. It invites you to align your surroundings with your deepest intention. Sometimes, the karmic mirror is very quiet. A child, an elderly parent, even a pet. Notice how they react to your energy more than your words. You can say, I'm fine, but if your energy is sharp, they feel it. Children often act out the stress that adults are refusing to acknowledge. When a normally calm child becomes anxious or aggressive, it's worth asking, what in the environment changed? What are they absorbing? This is not about guilt, it's about responsibility. The emotional climate we create becomes part of other people's experience too. You might have noticed that certain themes repeat across different relationships. Maybe you've had 3 different bosses, but the same story, feeling undervalued. Or 3 partners, but the same ending, emotional distance. When life repeats a lesson, it's not because you're stupid, it's because the karma is deep and life is patient. Each repetition is another chance to wake up. Instead of saying, why does this always happen to me? You can start asking, what am I being invited to see, claim, or change in myself that I still haven't? One subtle but crucial part of relationship karma is the expectations you carry. If you expect people to leave, you may unconsciously push them away. If you expect people to betray you, you may test them, accuse them, or withhold trust until the relationship suffocates. These behaviors often come from old wounds, not bad intentions, but they still plant seeds. Seeing this clearly can be painful, Because it means admitting, sometimes I participate in the very outcome I fear. Yet this realization is also profoundly hopeful, because it means you have leverage to change the pattern. Forgiveness is another key karmic element in relationships. Not the fake forgiveness where you say, "It's fine," but secretly keep a list of grievances. Real forgiveness is choosing to stop carrying the story of what they did like a stone in your pocket. It doesn't erase the past. It releases your grip on it. From a karmic perspective, forgiveness is less about what they deserve and more about what you deserve. A lighter heart, more space inside, less energy leaked into old narratives. You forgive to free yourself as much as to free them. Of course, forgiveness doesn't mean you let people keep hurting you. You can forgive and still create distance. You can understand someone and still say, "No more." The mirror effect means their behavior taught you something about your limits, your needs, your values. Once you learn that lesson, it's okay to move on. Bless them internally if you can. Wish them healing, and then close the door. Walking away from what harms you is also karma. The karma of honoring your own life as sacred. Ultimately, karmic relationships are not about blame, but about seeing. Seeing where you abandon yourself, where you overgive, where you shut down, where you attack, where you allow harm, and where you bring love. Each person who passes through your story, for a moment or a lifetime, is helping you see your own patterns more clearly. Some teach you by loving you well. Others teach you by hurting you deeply. Both kinds of lessons are powerful, but only if you're willing to ask, "What is this showing me about me?" And once you start seeing yourself more clearly through these mirrors, a new possibility appears. Instead of being dragged automatically by your reactions, you can begin to pause, breathe, and choose a different response. You don't have to smash every mirror or run from every reflection. You can learn to stand in front of them with more stability, more awareness, and more kindness. And that's where the next layer of karmic transformation begins, learning to respond instead of react. There's a split second in every situation that can change your entire karma. The space between what happens and what you do next. Someone raises their voice, and your chest lights up. A message appears on your screen, and your stomach drops. A memory flashes, and old anger explodes. Most of us never even notice that tiny gap. We jump straight from trigger to reaction like a reflex. But in Buddhist practice, that little space is sacred. It's the doorway between living on autopilot and living with awareness, between being dragged and being deliberate. Reacting is automatic. It's your nervous system saying, "We've seen this before. Here's what we always do." Maybe you always shout back, always shut down, always run away, always people please. It's fast, intense, and often regretted later. Responding, on the other hand, is slower, softer, more conscious. It doesn't mean you become passive or weak. It means you take a breath, feel what's happening inside, and then choose your next move instead of letting old patterns choose it for you. The external scene might be the same. The inner karma is completely different. Think of a text that hurts you. "We need to talk." Your mind instantly fills in the worst-case scenario. In a reactive mode, you might fire back an angry comment or start obsessively defending yourself in long paragraphs. In a responsive mode, you notice your heart racing, your thoughts spinning, your body tensing. You don't pretend it doesn't hurt. You simply give yourself one pause, one breath, one moment to say, "Okay, I'm triggered. Let me not make this worse." That small pause is a spiritual victory. It doesn't look dramatic, But karmically, it's huge. Your body is your first alert system when it comes to reactivity. Before your mouth opens, your shoulders tighten. Before your words get sharp, your jaw locks. Before you say yes when you want to say no, your chest feels heavy. Most of us have trained ourselves to ignore these signals because we're busy pushing through, performing, or defending ourselves. Learning to respond instead of react starts with honoring these physical alarms. They are not your enemies, they are your allies, warning you that you're about to run an old, painful script again. Try this. The next time you feel triggered, don't focus on the story right away. Focus on the sensation. Where is it in your body? Is it hot, cold, tight, buzzing? Is it in your throat, your chest, your stomach? You don't need to fix it immediately. Just notice it. By shifting attention from the external trigger to your internal experience, you interrupt the automatic chain of karma. You stop feeding the reaction with more stories for a moment, and instead bring it into the light of awareness, where new choices become possible. People often think responding instead of reacting means always staying calm and polite, like a robot monk who never feels anything. That's not the goal. The goal is not to erase your humanity, but to hold it with wisdom. Sometimes a wise response is strong and firm. Sometimes it's quiet and gentle. Sometimes it's walking away. Sometimes it's saying, "This is not okay." The difference is that you're acting from clarity, not from the explosion of the moment. You still feel the wave of emotion, but you learn to surf it instead of drowning in it. Imagine your mind as a house and every trigger as someone ringing the doorbell. Reacting is like flinging the door open and letting anyone run inside, rearrange your furniture, shout in your living room, and spray graffiti on your walls. Responding is hearing the bell, looking through the peephole, and deciding, do I let this in? How? Under what conditions? You might still open the door, but you don't surrender control of your interior space. Your mind and heart are your home. Not every impulse gets a key. One practical tool from Buddhist tradition is the 3-breath rule. When something hits you hard, before speaking or typing, you commit to taking 3 conscious breaths. On the first breath, you acknowledge, "I am triggered." On the second, you feel the sensation in your body without judgment. On the third, you ask, "What do I really want to create here?" Only then do you answer, act, or choose silence. You'd be amazed how many conflicts shrink or vanish when you just give yourself those 3 small islands of awareness. Another powerful practice is asking yourself a simple question before reacting. Will this action bring me closer to peace or further away? Not in theory, but in felt reality. If you send that angry message, will you really feel better in 2 hours? If you say yes again when you're exhausted, will you really feel more loved? If you choose to stay silent when something crosses your boundary, will the resentment help you sleep at night? These questions are not there to shame you. They're there to reconnect you with your deepest intentions instead of your fastest impulses. Of course, there will be moments when you fail spectacularly. You'll yell, slam the door, say unforgivable things, ghost people, or drown feelings in food, social media, or whatever your numbing habit is. When that happens, the ego loves to say, "See, you're hopeless. You'll never change." But responding instead of reacting also includes how you treat yourself after you react. You can punish yourself endlessly, or you can say, "Okay, I see what I did. It hurt me and others. What can I learn? How can I show up differently next time?" That shift from self-attack to self-honesty is also karmic healing. One image I like is the volume knob. Your triggers and reactions are like a song that's been playing for years, maybe decades. At first, it blasts at full volume, overpowering everything. You might not be able to turn it off immediately. That's okay. But with practice, you start reaching for the knob earlier. Instead of going from 0 to 100, maybe you stop at 70, then 50, then 30. You still feel the song, but it no longer shakes the walls. Over time, your nervous system learns new music, steadier rhythms of awareness, compassion, and choice. Responding instead of reacting is not about pleasing others. Sometimes your calm, conscious response will disappoint or even upset people who are used to your old patterns. If your habit was always saying yes, a peaceful no might shock them. If your habit was always exploding, a stable boundary might confuse them. That's okay. Their discomfort is part of their karmic field, not yours to manage entirely. Your responsibility is to act from integrity, not from fear of their reaction. You can be kind without abandoning yourself. It's also important to remember that not reacting doesn't mean suppressing everything. Stuffing emotions down and saying, "I'm fine, it's whatever," while boiling inside is not a spiritual response. It's a time bomb. A true response honors what you feel and chooses a wise way to express or work with it. That might be journaling before talking, breathing before answering, crying alone before deciding, or speaking honestly but calmly after you've cooled down. You're not pretending nothing happened. You're choosing how it will move through you and into the world. Over time, as you practice this, you start to sense a new kind of inner space. Moments that used to hijack your whole day become smaller. People who used to control your mood lose some of their power. You still feel pain, anger, sadness, or fear, but they don't define your entire reality in the same way. You start to trust yourself. Even if I get triggered, I know I have tools. I know I can pause. I know I can come back. That self-trust is an incredibly healing form of karma. It changes the way you walk through the world. And as your inner space expands, you naturally become less pulled by extremes, less likely to swing from overreaction to total shutdown, from harsh self-criticism to total denial. You begin to sense that somewhere between exploding and suppressing, there is a balanced way of being that honors your humanity and your wisdom at the same time. And that balance is exactly where our journey is quietly leading next. For most of your life, you've probably been taught that the only way to change is to push harder. Work more, sleep less, hustle, grind. Or then, when you burn out, you swing to the other extreme, giving up, numbing out, avoiding everything that feels uncomfortable. Buddhism looks at these two poles and quietly says, neither of these will bring you peace. The Buddha called this discovery the middle way, not a boring compromise, but a wise balance that actually supports growth instead of destroying you slowly from the inside. Before he awakened, the Buddha tried both extremes. First, he lived in luxury, surrounded by comfort and pleasure, never really facing suffering. Then he went all the way to self-torture, starvation, sleep deprivation, brutal discipline. He nearly died. It was only when he accepted a simple bowl of rice milk, when he allowed himself to be nourished again, that his mind cleared enough to see reality as it is. That small act was not weakness. It was wisdom. It was the beginning of a life built on balance instead of extremes. You know this pattern in your own life. Maybe you've gone on a perfect diet that allowed zero flexibility. No sugar, no bread, no joy. For a week, you felt powerful. Then reality hit. A party, a stressful day, a craving. One mistake turned into 10, and soon you were back to old habits. now with a side dish of guilt. Or maybe you promised yourself you'd meditate an hour a day, every day. And when you inevitably missed one day, you dropped the practice completely. This is the karma of extremes. They light up fast and burn out hard. The middle way says something very different. Go far enough to grow, but not so far that you break. Challenge yourself, but don't crucify yourself. Rest, but don't drown in comfort. It's like tuning a guitar string. If it's too tight, it snaps. If it's too loose, it makes no music. The right tension doesn't look dramatic from the outside, but it's what allows beautiful sound. Your life works the same way. When your string is tuned with wisdom, effort feels meaningful instead of punishing, and rest feels restorative instead of shameful. One powerful way to sense whether you're in the middle or at an extreme is to ask, how does this feel in my body over time? Not just in one moment, but across days and weeks. Harsh discipline might feel exciting at first, a burst of control and pride. But if your shoulders are always tense and your sleep is broken, it's a sign you're too tight. Endless indulgence might feel soothing for a weekend. Extra food, extra screens, extra avoidance. But if your chest feels heavy and your energy is dull, it's a sign you're too loose. The middle way is deeply practical. Suppose you want to start meditating. An extreme mind says, I'll wake up at 4 a.m. and sit for an hour every day for the rest of my life. The middle way says, let's start with 10 minutes I can actually sustain. If that becomes natural, I can gently increase it. The first plan sounds more impressive, but usually collapses under its own weight. The second plan looks humble, but over months and years, it quietly rewires your karma. Balance is not flashy, it's sustainable. This applies to work as well. You might have periods where you push insanely hard. Late nights, skipped meals, no time to breathe. In the short term, you get results. In the long term, you pay with your health, patience, and joy. On the other hand, staying forever in the comfort zone, never taking risks, never learning new skills, creates a different kind of suffering. Stagnation, regret, a feeling that life is passing you by. The middle way might look like focused work hours with real breaks, clear boundaries, and regular seasons of rest where you recharge without guilt. Think of your life as having seasons of practice. There are seasons for growth, when you have more energy, support, and stability. In those times, you can stretch yourself, take on bigger challenges, deepen your spiritual and practical disciplines. Then, there are seasons for integration, when life hits hard, illness, grief, transition, overwhelm. In those times, the middle way asks you to soften expectations, to protect your nervous system, to focus on essentials. Forcing summer behavior in winter leads to exhaustion. Wisdom adapts to the season you're actually in. Self-compassion is at the heart of the middle way. Not a soft excuse to avoid everything difficult, but a clear, kind voice that knows when enough is enough. That voice says, yes, do your practice. And also, you are still human when you miss a day. It says, you can do hard things. And also, you don't have to do all the hard things right now. When you relate to yourself this way, your spiritual path stops feeling like a war against your own humanity and starts feeling like a partnership with it. Notice how your mind loves to tell you that balance is not enough. If you meditate for 10 minutes, it says you should have done 30. If you rest for an afternoon, it says you're lazy. If you say no to one extra task, it says you're disappointing everyone. This inner critic thrives on extremes. It knows that if you live in balance, you become much harder to control. So it keeps moving the goalposts. Whatever you do, it's never enough. The middle way gently replies, I am allowed to be a work in progress and still be worthy of rest and respect. You can experiment with balance in very concrete ways. If you usually scroll on your phone until tuai, tuain, tuain, tuai, extreme change would be no phone ever again at night. 0 exceptions. The middle way might be, I'll plug my phone to charge in another room at midnight and read a few pages of a book instead. If you usually avoid all movement, extreme change might be, I'll go to the gym for 2 hours every day. The middle way says, how about a 20-minute walk after dinner? These choices seem small, but their karma is huge when repeated. The beauty of living the middle way is that it slowly builds trust with yourself. When you constantly set impossible standards and then break them, you train your mind not to believe your own promises. Sure, you'll start on Monday, it laughs. But when you set realistic commitments and keep them, even gently, your system learns. When I say I'll do something, I usually do. That quiet self-respect is a powerful form of spiritual wealth. It makes future change easier because you're no longer negotiating with someone you consider unreliable. Balance doesn't mean everything is always 50-50. Some days you'll lean more toward effort, other days you'll lean more toward rest. Some seasons will be busy, others calm. The middle way is less about precise math and more about constant listening. You ask often, how am I, really? Am I pushing past my limits? Am I hiding from growth? What adjustment would bring me closer to clarity, kindness, and sanity right now? These questions don't need perfect answers. The act of asking them already turns you toward balance. Sometimes the wisest, most karmically wholesome action you can take is to accept a bowl of rice milk in your own life. Whatever that looks like for you. Maybe it's therapy you've been avoiding, or a day off you keep postponing, or asking a friend for help, or simply eating a proper meal instead of surviving on snacks and coffee. Accepting nourishment isn't a sign that you've failed at being strong. It's a sign that you're finally strong enough to admit you're human and deserve support. And as your life becomes more balanced, you begin to notice a subtle but profound shift. Your harmful patterns don't disappear overnight, but they lose some of their grip. You're less likely to binge after a stressful day because you're not running on pure emptiness. You're less likely to explode in anger because you're not chronically overextended. Calm no longer feels like a rare accident. It becomes a possible default. And from that calmer ground, you can start to look even more honestly at the specific patterns that still hurt you. The ones that run, often silently, in the background of your days. Because beneath the surface of your balanced or imbalanced life, there are old karmic programs, deeply ingrained patterns of thought and behavior that quietly shape what you do when you're tired, scared, or on autopilot. And learning how to see and gently rewrite those programs is the next step in changing your karma from the inside out. There's something running your life that you didn't consciously choose. Not a demon, not a curse, but a collection of patterns installed over years. How you respond to stress, how you handle praise, how you deal with conflict, how you treat yourself when you fail. These patterns are what Buddhism calls conditioning, mental formations, sankaras, that quietly push you in certain directions before you even think. The scary part is that they feel like just who I am. The hopeful part is that they are learned, and anything learned can be slowly, patiently relearned. You can see these hidden programs most clearly in the moments when you say, I don't know why I did that. It just happened. You didn't decide to eat the whole bag of chips. Suddenly it was empty. You didn't decide to start that argument. The words just exploded out of your mouth. You didn't decide to shut down emotionally. Your body simply went numb. That just happened feeling is one of the clearest signs that an old karmic script has taken the wheel, and your conscious mind is riding in the back seat. Most of these scripts were written when you were small, long before you had the tools to question them. Maybe when you cried, you were told to stop exaggerating, so you learned to swallow your feelings. Maybe when you were proud of something, someone mocked you, so you learned not to shine too much. Maybe love felt inconsistent, so you learned to cling or to keep your distance. As a child, you weren't wrong for adapting. You were surviving. But as an adult, those same survival codes might be quietly sabotaging the life you actually want. Imagine your brain like a path through a field. The first time a thought or reaction happens, it's just a faint trail in the grass. But if you walk that same path every day, it becomes a dirt road, then a paved highway. Your nervous system starts preferring that route even when it's painful, simply because it's familiar. That's why you can intellectually understand what would be healthier, setting a boundary, choosing a kinder response, and still feel your body dragging you down the old road. The problem is not lack of knowledge. It's deeply practiced karma. The first step in changing these hidden programs is not forcing yourself to be different overnight. It's seeing them with honesty, without adding extra shame on top. Think of yourself as a curious detective rather than a harsh judge. When you react in a way you don't like, instead of saying, "I'm terrible," try asking, "Where have I seen this pattern before? What does it remind me of? When did I first learn that this was the safest option?" These questions don't excuse harmful behavior, but they turn it into information instead of a permanent identity. For example, maybe you notice that every time someone disagrees with you, you feel instantly attacked. Your heart races, your mind gathers arguments, and the conversation becomes a battlefield. If you sit with that pattern, you might realize that in your childhood, disagreement often meant ridicule or punishment. So your nervous system learned, if I'm not right, I'm in danger. That belief is still running quietly in the background, like an outdated app draining your battery. Seeing this clearly doesn't magically fix it, but it opens a tiny bit of space between the present moment and the old story. Another common hidden program is the good student pattern, always trying to do everything correctly so you don't get in trouble or disappoint anyone. On the surface, it looks like responsibility, but underneath, it can be pure fear. Fear of rejection, fear of being seen as lazy, fear of losing love. People with this pattern often burn out because they don't know how to stop without feeling guilty. Their karma says, "You are only safe if you are useful." So they say yes when they mean no, and then wonder why they feel so empty and resentful inside. You might also recognize the "I don't need anyone" pattern. Maybe you learned early that asking for help led to disappointment or shame. So your system adapted. "I'll never depend on anyone again." This program can make you look strong and independent, but inside, it can create a deep, quiet loneliness. You don't let people see you struggle. You don't let them in when you're hurting. And then you tell yourself the story. Nobody cares. The truth is, many people would care if they had access. The karmic script is what keeps the door locked. One powerful way to work with these programs is to catch them in real time, like we did earlier with reactions. When you notice yourself doing the thing again, overeating, overthinking, overworking, overpleasing, pause and label it gently. This is that old pattern. Not "I am horrible," but "this pattern is visiting." That small linguistic shift separates your identity from the habit. You stop being a failure and start being a human who learned a response once and has repeated it many times. It sounds small, but karmically, it's a huge reframing. It can also help to literally write your programs down. Take a notebook and list the patterns you see in yourself. When I feel criticized, I do X. When I feel lonely, I do Y. When I feel overwhelmed, I do Z. Then, next to each one, write what that pattern is trying to protect in you. Maybe your anger is protecting your sense of worth. Maybe your withdrawal is protecting your heart from being hurt. When you see the protective intention, you can thank the pattern for trying to help, even as you decide to learn a gentler way. From a Buddhist perspective, these programs are not signs of you being broken. They're signs of you being conditioned. Everyone has them. Even the Buddha had conditioning before awakening. What changes on the path is not that you become someone who never feels fear or anger, but someone who is no longer controlled by them in the same blind way. You start to notice them as guests, not landlords. They can knock and make noise, but they don't get to run the whole house unchecked anymore. At some point, awareness alone is not enough. You need new scripts to replace the old ones. If your default program says, "When I feel attacked, I shout," the new script might be, "When I feel attacked, I first take one breath and name what I'm feeling. I'm hurt and defensive right now." If your old script says, "When I feel lonely, I numb out," the new one might be, "When I feel lonely, I'll send one honest message to someone I trust or write in my journal for 5 minutes." These replacements don't have to be perfect. They just have to be slightly more wholesome. Of course, your nervous system won't instantly applaud these new choices. It may feel weird, fake, or even wrong at first. That's normal. Remember the path in the field. The old highway is smooth and familiar. The new trail is awkward and full of tall grass. At the beginning, walking the new way takes effort. You might slip back to the old highway, and that's okay. The key is to return again and again to the new path, even if only for a few steps. Over time, that repetition is how new karma lays down fresh tracks. It can be incredibly helpful to involve your body when rewriting patterns. If your program is freeze when confronted, practice in safe moments, standing tall, relaxing your shoulders, and saying simple phrases out loud. I hear you. I need a moment. I don't agree. At first, it will feel uncomfortable, but you're teaching your nervous system that it is possible to stay present and speak without collapsing. This is not just psychological work, it's physical retraining, teaching your cells a new way to exist under pressure. Another layer of support comes from choosing environments that don't constantly reinforce your old karma. If your programs are about people-pleasing and overwork, a toxic workplace will feed them like fertilizer. If your patterns are about self-hatred, certain social media spaces will trigger them non-stop. You may not be able to change everything overnight, but you can start by adjusting small things. Who you talk to about delicate topics, what you consume online, what kind of voices you allow to be loud in your everyday life. As you keep doing this work, you'll probably notice something bittersweet. Some relationships fit your old programming better than your new one. When you stop always apologizing, some people will be uncomfortable. When you stop always rescuing, some people will be disappointed. When you start being honest, some people will pull away. That hurts, but it's also karmic proof that you're changing. Your inner scripts and your outer connections are reorganizing. Space leaves for new people and healthier dynamics to enter. Slowly, you begin to realize that these hidden programs, while powerful, are not the deepest truth of who you are. They're like costumes you've worn for so long that you forgot your own face underneath. Buddhism invites you to gently patiently take off each layer, not by force, but by understanding. You don't need to tear the costume, you just need to see that it's not your skin. And with every pattern you see clearly, you recover a bit more of your real freedom to choose. And once you start reclaiming that freedom, a new question naturally arises. How do you protect these fresh choices and new directions when life gets chaotic again? What inner code of conduct can guide you when your clarity fades and old habits try to pull you back? At some point on the path, you realize that insight alone isn't enough. You can understand karma, see your patterns, meditate, breathe, and still, in a tired or stressed moment, you say something cruel, break a promise, or go back to a habit that hurts you. That's when you start to see why the Buddha talked so much about conduct, not as a list of punishments, but as anchors, simple commitments that protect you when your clarity disappears. Think of them as future you insurance. When you're tired, lonely, or triggered, these anchors quietly hold the line so you don't undo all the inner work you've been doing. In Buddhism, these anchors are known as the 5 precepts. Many people hear the word precept and immediately think rules, restrictions, or religious guilt. But in their original spirit, they're more like agreements you make with yourself when you're calm, so that when you're not calm, you don't create a storm that wrecks your own house. They're not about being a good boy or good girl for some judge in the sky. They're about reducing the amount of unnecessary suffering you create in your own life and in the lives of people around you. An easy way to think of them is as 5 big areas where humans tend to sabotage themselves: how we treat life, how we treat resources, how we treat intimacy, how we use words, and how we use substances or distractions. If you look at most of your painful regrets, they probably sit in one of those zones. A harsh thing you said, a trust you broke, a night you drank too much and did something you'd never do sober, a time you took more than you needed. The precepts say, instead of waiting for regret and then apologizing to the universe, what if we prevented some of that pain in the first place? The first anchor is about life, not harming, not killing. On the surface, it's obvious. Don't murder, don't be violent. But it also points to more subtle ways we attack life daily. When you drive aggressively and treat other people as obstacles, you're harming. When you push your own body until it collapses, you're harming. When you speak to yourself like an enemy, you're harming. This precept invites a new question. Am I on the side of life right now? That might look like resting instead of pushing, or moving your body instead of neglecting it, or choosing patience over road rage when someone is slow in front of you. The second anchor is about not taking what isn't given. Again, the simple version is don't steal. But stealing isn't just walking out of a store with something hidden in your bag. It can be using people's time carelessly, always being late, always asking for more than you offer. It can be downloading everything for free from creators you could support. It can be taking advantage of someone's kindness without any intention to reciprocate. Senatoi. From a karmic point of view, this precept protects your relationship with enough. When you practice not taking what isn't offered, you start noticing how often you actually have more than you thought. The third anchor is about sexual and relational integrity. Traditionally, it's framed as not engaging in sexual misconduct, not betraying trust, not using sexuality to harm or manipulate. In modern life, it can be widened to don't play with people's hearts. That means not leading someone on when you know you're not serious, not cheating, not trying to fix loneliness by collecting bodies or attention you don't genuinely honor. It also means not betraying your own boundaries to keep someone interested. The karma of this area is heavy when it goes wrong. This precept isn't here to shame your desire. It's here to protect the tenderness of real connection. The fourth anchor is about speech. Not lying, not using words as weapons. Words are like little karma delivery drones. You send them out, and they eventually circle back into your own life. When you lie, even small lies, you create fog. People trust you less. You trust yourself less. Reality becomes fuzzy. When you gossip, you cultivate a mind that looks for flaws. When you habitually complain, you train your brain to see only what's wrong. The precept doesn't say, be fake nice, or never speak hard truths. It says, let your words be grounded in truth and aimed as much as possible at reducing suffering, not adding to it. The fifth anchor is about intoxicants, anything that clouds your clarity and makes you heedless. In the Buddha's time, that mostly meant alcohol and certain drugs. Today, we could add other things: compulsive phone use, binge watching, gambling, certain foods. Anything you use not as a tool, but as an escape hatch from your own experience. This precept doesn't demand that you become a saint who never enjoys a glass of wine or a movie. It simply asks, is this helping me stay awake to my life, or is it putting me to sleep? Over and over, choosing wakefulness shapes karma in a very different direction than choosing numbness. When you first encounter these precepts, your mind might react with, so I'm not allowed to live, have fun, or be human. But the middle way we talked about still applies. The point isn't to walk around terrified of breaking a rule. The point is to use these anchors to notice where your behavior repeatedly creates pain. If you're always waking up hungover and ashamed, the fifth precept might be a gift, not a prison. If your lies keep exploding in your face, the fourth precept becomes a doorway to a simpler, lighter life. They're not random commandments. They're maps of where humans commonly fall into ditches. One helpful way to work with these anchors is not, I must follow all 5 perfectly forever, but which one is screaming the loudest in my life right now? Maybe your relationships are full of distrust. Then speech and sexuality might be the focus. Maybe your health is collapsing. Then non-harming and intoxicants rise to the front. You choose one precept and treat it as your main experiment for a week or a month. Not with perfectionism, but with curiosity. What happens to my mind, my relationships, my sense of peace when I lean into this one anchor more consciously? It's also important to see that each precept has a positive side, not just a don't. Not harming invites active caring. Not stealing invites generosity. Relational integrity invites deep, honest intimacy. Truthful speech invites trust and clarity. Avoiding intoxication invites genuine presence and joy. So your inner dialogue shifts from, I'm not allowed to I get to practice. You're not just avoiding bad karma. You're actively planting good karma, seeds of kindness, trust, safety, and clarity that will show up later as very real experiences in your everyday life. These anchors become most powerful when you treat them as promises you make from your higher self to your more confused self. On a good day, you might sit down and write, when I'm angry, I commit not to use words as weapons. That's you, from the mountaintop of clarity, leaving a note for yourself in the valley when everything is foggy. Later, when you're triggered, you may still fail. But if you keep returning to that promise, apologizing when needed, and trying again, you slowly change your default settings. That's karmic reprogramming in real time. Not magical, not instant, but very real. Of course, you will break these precepts sometimes. You will say things you regret. You will numb out. You will take more than you give. That's not a sign you should quit. It's a sign you're human. The key is how you respond after. Instead of drowning in shame, you can acknowledge, yes, I stepped outside my own code. I see the impact. I feel the weight of it. What can I do to repair what I can and recommit to my anchor? That response itself is wholesome karma. It turns a fall into a lesson instead of a life sentence. Over time, as these ethical anchors sink deeper into your bones, you may notice something subtle. Your mind becomes lighter. Not because nothing hard happens, but because you trust yourself more inside the storms. You know you're less likely to blow up your own life with one reckless night, one cruel sentence, one betrayal of your deepest values. That inner trust is worth more than any external success. It's a quiet dignity. I may not control everything that happens to me, but I'm learning to control what I put into the world. And as you start living in closer alignment with these anchors, a new layer of practice naturally emerges. It's not just about avoiding harm or staying out of trouble anymore. It's about actively cultivating the kind of qualities, generosity, kindness, wisdom, presence, that make your life feel rich from the inside out, even on difficult days. And that's where our journey now begins to turn next. Up to now, we've talked a lot about what not to do. Not harming, not lying, not numbing out, not repeating the same old patterns. That's important, but if you only focus on what you're avoiding, life can start to feel like a list of don'ts. The Buddha didn't stop there. He taught that real transformation comes when you actively plant good seeds, moments of generosity, kindness, patience, wisdom, and presence. Karma isn't only about stopping what hurts, it's about building what heals, one small action at a time. Imagine a garden where you only pull weeds but never plant flowers. Yes, it's better than a jungle of thorns, but it still looks empty, dry, a little sad. That's what life feels like when you quit harmful habits, but don't fill the space with anything nourishing. You stop yelling, but you don't learn to speak gently. You stop overworking, but you don't explore creativity or rest. You stop numbing, but you don't find new ways to soothe and inspire yourself. The soil is ready, but nothing beautiful has roots yet. Planting wholesome karma is about filling that open ground with life. The Buddha often started with generosity, not because he wanted people to be nice, but because giving softens the grip of fear and scarcity. When you share something, your time, your attention, your skills, your money, you send a powerful signal to your nervous system. There is enough. I am not as alone as I think. I can afford to care. You don't have to be rich to practice this. You can offer a sincere compliment. Help someone with a task they find hard. Really listen to a friend without checking your phone. Each act is a seed. None of them are wasted. You can start ridiculously small. Maybe every day you choose one tiny act of kindness on purpose. Hold the elevator. Let someone merge in traffic without swearing at them in your head. Send a message to someone you appreciate, just to say, "I'm glad you exist." Pay for the coffee of the person behind you once a month. The point isn't to build a public brand of generosity. It's to quietly train your heart to enjoy giving. Over time, you'll notice something interesting. The more you give, the less trapped you feel in your own problems. Another powerful, wholesome seed is patience. Not the passive, teeth-gritted waiting where you're secretly boiling inside, but a steady willingness to let things unfold without attacking yourself or others. Every time you don't honk in traffic, don't snap at the slow cashier, don't rush your own healing, you're planting patience. You're telling life, "I trust the timing a little more than I did yesterday." This doesn't mean you stop taking action. It means you stop demanding that everything obey your schedule, or else you explode. Patience is quiet, but karmically, it's giant. Then there's loving kindness, a fancy term for the simple wish that others be well. You don't have to agree with someone, approve of them, or even like them to practice this. You just start with a gentle thought. May you be free from suffering. May you find peace. You can send this to a friend, a stranger, even someone you resent. You don't do it to excuse bad behavior. You do it to make sure your heart doesn't harden around hatred. The first person healed by loving kindness is always you, because you're the one who has to carry those wishes around. A very practical way to cultivate loving kindness is to choose one person a day and silently bless them. It could be the barista, your neighbor, a co-worker, or someone you see in the street who looks tired. As you pass them, think, I hope something good happens for you today. You don't need them to know. This is between you and your own heart. It's like doing push-ups for your compassion muscles. They get stronger not by thinking about kindness in theory, but by repeatedly lifting small weights in daily life. Wisdom is another wholesome quality that can be grown intentionally. Wisdom isn't just knowing spiritual quotes, it's seeing clearly what leads to suffering and what doesn't. You grow wisdom every time you pause to ask, what did I learn from this? Instead of just, why did this happen to me? You grow wisdom when you listen more than you talk, when you admit, I don't know, when you change your mind in the face of new evidence. You can feed wisdom by reading good books, listening to teachings, journaling honestly, asking better questions instead of rehearsing old complaints. Presence, simply being where you are, might be the most underrated wholesome seed of all. When you're really present, you taste your food. You feel the water in the shower. You hear the tone behind someone's words. You stop losing half your life in the fog of thoughts about yesterday and tomorrow. One easy practice is to pick an everyday activity and make it your presence ritual. Brushing your teeth, making coffee, washing your face. For those 2 or 3 minutes, you give full attention to each movement. It's normal to get distracted. The seed is in the returning. We often underestimate how small these seeds can be. Your mind says, what difference does one kind word, one extra breath, one small act make? But karma doesn't grow in giant leaps. It grows in tiny, repeated actions. One glass of water won't fix dehydration, but many will. One night of sleep won't heal exhaustion, but 100 will. One moment of kindness won't erase a lifetime of hurt, but it can be the first crack in the wall around your heart. Wholesome karma is built in increments, not miracles. If you're not sure where to start, look at where your unwholesome patterns are strongest and plant the opposite. If you're often impatient, practice one slow activity a day. If you tend to withhold affection, say thank you or I appreciate you more often. If you're trapped in scarcity thinking, practice tiny acts of generosity. This isn't fake positivity. It's targeted planting. You're not pretending the old seeds don't exist. You're intentionally giving more water and sunlight to the ones that will eventually change the landscape. Importantly, don't wait to feel like it. Much of wholesome karma is planted when you don't feel generous, patient, or kind, but you act that way anyway, not to impress anyone, but because that's the person you want to become. Feelings catch up later. Habit first. Emotion later. Think of it like exercise. You don't always feel motivated before the workout, but if you show up anyway, your energy and mood often improve as a result. In the same way, choosing a wholesome action can create the very feeling you thought you had to wait for. As you practice planting these good seeds, you'll start noticing subtle shifts. A thought that would have owned you for hours now passes in minutes. A situation that once triggered rage now triggers curiosity. You still feel pain, but you also feel more options. You might even catch yourself doing something kind automatically and realize, oh, this used to be hard. Now it's just natural. That's wholesome karma ripening, the fruit of hundreds of small choices you made when no one was watching. And here's something beautiful. Your wholesome seeds don't only grow in your life, they grow in other people's lives too. Your patience makes it easier for someone else to breathe. Your honesty makes it safer for someone else to tell the truth. Your presence makes it more likely that someone will feel seen and valued today. Your inner work quietly upgrades the emotional climate around you. Without preaching, you become a kind of walking invitation. Hey, there's another way to be here. A softer way. A freer way. Sooner or later, you'll start to notice that most of your day isn't made of grand heroics or dramatic failures. It's made of ordinary, neutral moments, brushing your teeth, walking to the kitchen, sitting at a red light, waiting in line. Those moments can stay blank and unconscious, or they can become powerful soil for all these wholesome seeds you're learning to plant. And that opens the door to a deeper question. How do you turn the most ordinary parts of your routine into a path of awakening instead of just background noise? If you think spiritual practice only happens on a cushion, in a temple, or during a 3-hour video like this, life will always feel divided in two: real life and practice. That split is exhausting. You feel peaceful for 10 minutes of meditation, then lose it the moment someone cuts you off in traffic or your phone buzzes with bad news. The Buddha offered a much kinder option. Let your whole life become the temple. Let brushing your teeth, washing dishes, walking to the bathroom, and answering emails become part of the path instead of interruptions to it. The truth is, most of your karma is not created in dramatic moments. It's created in the tiny, repetitive, boring moments you barely notice. How you react when you're put on hold. How you treat your body getting out of bed. How you speak to yourself in the mirror. How you eat when nobody is watching. These neutral moments are like blank pages. You can scribble on them unconsciously, or you can write something deliberate. Everyday mindfulness is about realizing that the small stuff is not small at all. It's where your habits live. A simple way to start is to pick one daily activity and turn it into a sacred ritual of awareness. Let's say you choose brushing your teeth. Instead of scrolling your phone or planning the whole day in your head, you bring your attention fully to the experience. The taste of the toothpaste, the sound of the brush, the movement of your arm, the feeling of taking care of yourself. It's only 2 or 3 minutes, but in those minutes, you're not lost in past or future. You're right here, planting seeds of presence. You can do the same with making your morning drink, whether it's coffee, tea, or water. Notice the sound of the kettle, the smell of the coffee grounds, the warmth of the mug in your hands. Instead of chugging it while checking notifications, you pause for just a breath or two. I'm alive. I'm here. I'm about to start another day. That tiny pause is like bowing to your own life. You don't need incense or chanting. You just need one honest breath of gratitude and awareness. Walking is another underrated spiritual practice. Most of us walk like we're trying to fast forward our own lives. Shoulders tense, mind racing, eyes glazed. Try this experiment for one day. Every time you walk from one room to another, let that walk be your mindfulness bell. Feel your feet touching the floor. Notice the shift of weight, the sway of your arms, the contact of air on your skin. You don't have to walk slowly like a movie monk. You just walk with the intention to actually be there for those few steps. Eating might be the most powerful everyday practice of all, because you do it multiple times a day and it directly affects your body and mind. In mindfulness, you're not asked to eat like a robot or eliminate pleasure. You're simply invited to actually taste your food. Put your phone down. Look at what's on your plate. Notice the colors, textures, smells. Take your first bite, as if it's the first time you've ever tasted that food. Chew. Feel it. Your digestion improves, your cravings soften, and your relationship with your own body slowly becomes less of a war and more of a friendship. You might worry, but if I'm this mindful, won't everything take forever? The answer is no. You can be fully present in 5 seconds. Mindfulness is not about dragging time. It's about actually inhabiting it. You can be mindful in the time it takes a traffic light to change, in the 3 seconds before you answer a message, in the loading screen when you're waiting for a page to open. Those little pockets of time that used to be filled with impatience can become mini retreats where you come back to yourself. Another doorway into everyday mindfulness is sound. Instead of being constantly annoyed by noises, barking dogs, traffic, neighbors, notifications, you can use them as reminders. Every time you hear a notification, you don't have to respond instantly. You can take one breath before looking. Every time you hear a bird, you let it pull you out of your thoughts for a second and into the reality of the moment. The world is full of bells. Mindfulness is just learning to hear them differently. Your body is constantly giving you chances to practice. Every ache, stretch, and sigh is an invitation. When you sit down, you can notice the contact of your body with the chair. When you lie down, you can feel the weight of your body dropping into the bed. When you wash your hands, you can feel the water, the temperature, the texture of the soap. These are not advanced techniques. They're simply remembering to show up to experiences you were already having, instead of abandoning them for thoughts. Mindfulness also transforms how you use technology. Instead of checking your phone 100 times a day without thinking, you can decide, every time I reach for my phone, I'll ask, do I really need this right now, or am I just uncomfortable? You don't have to say no every time. The practice is in seeing the impulse. If you do open it, you can be clear. I'm choosing to watch a video for 10 minutes, instead of falling into a 2-hour vortex without noticing. Technology doesn't have to own your karma. Awareness can sit in the driver's seat. Even chores can become practice. Washing dishes, folding clothes, sweeping the floor. These can feel like punishments or like moving meditations. The difference is your attitude. If you see them as unfair burdens, your mind produces resentment and boredom. If you see them as chances to care for your space, your body, and the people who live with you, they become quiet offerings. You can even dedicate each task. May this clean space bring a little more ease to everyone who lives here. Suddenly, housework is not just work. It's active love. Of course, there will be days when you forget all of this and spend hours on autopilot. You'll eat in front of a screen, rush everywhere, and realize at night you barely remember what happened. That's not failure, that's information. The moment you remember, even if it's at 11:59 hypoderpheme, you can take one conscious breath and say, okay, I was gone, now I'm back. That single breath is like turning the light on in a dark room. Your whole day wasn't wasted. It became raw material for the moment of awakening happening right now. It can help to give yourself simple cues. For example, every time you touch a door handle, let that remind you to take one breath. Every time you drink water, use the first sip as a moment of gratitude. Every time you sit down at your desk, pause for 3 seconds before diving into work. These micro-rituals are like little hooks that keep pulling your attention back into the present moment. Over time, they weave a net of awareness through your day so you don't drift too far for too long. Mindfulness in everyday life also means being present with emotions as they arise. Not just the peaceful ones, but the messy ones. Irritation at the slow line, sadness in the shower, anxiety as you open your inbox. Instead of immediately trying to fix, escape, or explain the feeling, you give it a few seconds of honest attention. Oh, this is frustration. It feels tight in my chest. You don't need to build a whole story around it. You just let it be seen. Emotions that are seen and felt move on more easily than emotions that are resisted or denied. One of the biggest benefits of everyday mindfulness is that it gradually shrinks the distance between spiritual you and ordinary you. You stop being calm only when the room is quiet and the incense is lit. You start carrying little pockets of stillness into traffic, into work, into parenting, into conflict. Your practice is no longer something separate from your life. It is your life. And that means progress happens even on days when you don't have time for meditation because you're meditating while you live. Over time, as these small mindful moments accumulate, you might notice that your whole experience of time changes. Days feel less like a blur and more like a series of distinct, lived moments. You remember more. You regret less. You feel less like life is racing past you, and more like you are actually here for it. This doesn't mean everything becomes easy or pleasant, but it does mean you stop missing your own existence while you're busy thinking about some hypothetical better one. And as you learn to meet your ordinary moments with this kind of presence, something deeper becomes possible. You can start to see not only your actions, but also your consumption, what you allow into your body, your mind, and your heart, as part of your karma. And that opens the door to a much more conscious relationship with food, media, and everything else you take in every single day. Every day, you're eating far more than food. You're eating news, opinions, images, videos, comments, stories, and energy. You're feeding your nervous system with what you scroll, watch, listen to, and believe. Buddhism looks at all of that and says, very simply, this is also karma, not in a mystical way, but in a very practical one. What you take in shapes how you feel, your mood, your anxiety, your hope, your fear. They're all being fed by what you consume. Let's start with literal food, because it's the most obvious. If you eat heavy greasy food late at night, you know what happens the next morning. You wake up foggy, sluggish, irritated, and your spiritual problem feels huge. But often it isn't spiritual. It's your poor stomach crying. What did we just do? The Buddha never said you must eat tasteless gruel forever to be wise. He said, notice what you consume and how it affects your body and mind over time. Imagine your body as a temple, not in a cute Instagram quote way, but in a real one. In a temple, people are careful about what they bring inside. They don't dump trash there. But many of us treat our own body like the bins behind the temple instead. We feed it junk non-stop, then blame ourselves for not having energy or clarity. Conscious consumption begins when you ask, before eating, is this fuel or punishment? Not with guilt, but with curiosity. How will I feel in 2 hours if I eat this now? You don't have to become obsessed or rigid to practice this. You can still enjoy chocolate, pizza, or that comfort food you love so much. The middle way applies here too. Not harsh starvation, not endless indulgence. A simple practice is to add more nourishment before you subtract anything. More water, more real vegetables, more simple meals that your body can digest easily. As your body feels better, you'll naturally have less hunger for what hurts you. Now, shift from food to media. The diet most people never question. You can eat the emotional equivalent of junk food all day just by scrolling. Endless drama, outrage, bad news, gossip, hate, comparison, and fear on repeat. Then you wonder why the world feels unbearable, and your chest feels heavy. Your mind is digesting everything you've just fed it, and some of it is straight poison. Again, not morally, but energetically. It makes peace almost impossible to access. Try this experiment for 1 week. Treat your media like food labels. Before you click, pause and ask, is this nourishing, neutral, or toxic for me right now? Nourishing might be a wise talk, a calming playlist, or a story that inspires kindness. Neutral might be a light video that makes you smile, but doesn't leave residue. Toxic is anything that leaves you more anxious, hopeless, hateful, or numb afterward. You don't have to ban everything forever. Just start noticing the effect honestly. You'll probably notice that some content is like sugar. It spikes you, then crashes you. Drama videos, angry rants, endless exposed content can feel exciting at first. Your heart beats faster. Your brain says, wow, tell me more, more, more. But afterward, you feel tense, suspicious, and oddly empty, like after a junk binge. This doesn't mean you must ignore all problems in the world. It means you choose to balance awareness with sanity, truth with inner stability. Another area of consumption we rarely name is people's energy. Some conversations leave you feeling alive, grounded, and more yourself. Others leave you drained, confused, or full of borrowed negativity that isn't yours. Conscious consumption means becoming a bit more selective with your exposure. Not cutting everyone off, but asking, how do I feel after time with this person? If every interaction feels like drinking poison, it's okay to limit the dosage. Of course, you can't always avoid difficult people or hard conversations. Your boss, a family member, or someone you live with may be struggling deeply. In those moments, conscious consumption becomes conscious filtering. You show up with compassion, but you don't swallow every opinion as truth. You feel their pain without making it your entire identity for the rest of the day. You learn to say inwardly, this belongs to them. I can care without carrying everything. Now look at what you consume through your ears. Music, podcasts, voices, they all carry a certain emotional climate. Some songs soothe your nervous system and open your heart quietly. Others keep you stuck in anger, resentment, or self-pity on loop for hours. Notice what you tend to play when you're sad or angry. Does it help you heal or dig deeper? You don't have to stop listening. Just know when it's time to switch the soundtrack. One powerful practice is creating a wholesome playlist for your worst moods. A list of songs, talks, or sounds that you know help you come back to center. When your mind wants to drown in chaos, you give it this as an alternative. You're not forcing yourself to cheer up. You're offering a different kind of food. Sometimes we forget we can change the channel at all. We just stay on one station. This little playlist is like a first aid kit for your ears and your emotions. Conscious consumption also means asking, what am I feeding my beliefs? If you constantly watch content that says, everyone is selfish and cruel, guess what? Your brain starts filtering reality to match that narrative. ignoring kindness around you. If you only consume stories of failure, you'll lose faith in your own potential. On the other hand, if you feed yourself examples of courage, compassion, and growth, you slowly begin to believe those qualities are possible in you and others too. It's helpful to make a kind of intake inventory for one day. Write down what you ate, what you watched, what you listened to, and who you talked to. Then, without judging, write how you felt at the end of that day. Clear or foggy, hopeful or heavy, connected or isolated, calm or on edge. You'll start seeing patterns. Certain foods, shows, or people always leave the same trace. That awareness gives you power. You can adjust the inputs to change the outputs. Remember, this is not about becoming a paranoid purity-obsessed monk overnight. You will still watch silly videos, eat snacks, and talk to tired people. The practice is not about perfection, it's about direction and proportion. More nourishment, less poison, more awareness, less autopilot. If most of what you consume is wholesome or neutral, a little junk won't wreck you. Your system will be strong enough to process it without losing your inner balance. As you refine what you feed your body and mind, something interesting happens. Things that used to thrill you start to feel cheap, loud, or unnecessarily harsh. You may notice you can't binge certain content anymore without feeling it in your chest. You might crave silence, nature, deeper conversations, simpler food more often. That's not you becoming boring. That's your nervous system healing and recalibrating. Your taste for peace grows as you give it more space at your inner table. And the more you live this way, the more you begin to realize a bigger truth. You're not just a separate consumer walking through a supermarket of life. Everything you take in and everything you put out ripples into a much larger web. Your choices about food, media, speech, and energy don't stop at the edge of your skin. They affect families, communities, and ecosystems you may never see. Seeing that interconnection clearly is the next step in understanding karma on a global scale. We've been talking a lot about your actions, your habits, your inner garden. But there's a truth the Buddha saw very clearly. You don't live in a vacuum. Every choice you make touches people you'll never meet, in ways you can't fully see. You're like a single thread woven into a gigantic tapestry of causes and conditions. Pull on your thread, and the whole fabric shifts just a little bit, whether you notice or not. This is interdependence. Nothing, and no one, is truly separate. A simple way to feel this is to look at one meal on your table. The rice, vegetables, spices, oil, they didn't appear there by magic. There was soil, rain, sun, farmers, drivers, packers, store workers, cooks involved. There were roads built, machines running, countless hands and decisions behind it. A whole world quietly moved so that you could sit down and eat in this moment. Your simple dinner is actually a global event when you see it clearly. The Buddha used a metaphor called Indra's net to explain this. Imagine an infinite net stretching in all directions, with a jewel at every knot. Each jewel reflects all the others. Change one, and every reflection changes two. You are one jewel, but your reflections appear in family, friends, strangers, animals. Your mood today might affect a cashier, who affects their child, who affects a classmate. Karma isn't a private movie. It's a shared field where all our actions echo. Think about how one person's calm can settle an entire room, or how one person's rage can poison a whole evening for everyone present. You've felt this, walking into a space and instantly sensing tension or ease. No one said anything yet, but the weather of the room hits your nervous system. That weather is collective karma, the sum of countless past reactions and choices. When you enter a room, you're not just affected by it, you're also adding to it. This means your practice is never just self-care in a selfish way. When you choose to breathe instead of explode, you're protecting more than your peace. You're protecting your partner from unnecessary harm, your children from extra fear. You're protecting strangers who would have met you while you were still on fire. A kinder choice in you changes the future emotional weather for many others. You may never know their names, but they still receive the blessing. Interdependence also explains why harm spreads so quickly. A boss humiliates an employee who goes home and shouts at their child. The child kicks the dog bites a visitor. The visitor leaves in a bad mood. The visitor snaps at a cashier. The cashier numbs out on their phone all night. None of them started it, but each one passed the flame along without seeing. When you interrupt that chain, even once, you're quietly doing spiritual surgery. On a bigger scale, your choices around money and consumption ripple outward too. What you buy supports certain companies, workers, and environmental impacts. You might not see the factory worker, the polluted river, or the exploited farmer, but they're part of the karmic bill attached to a cheap product made without care. No one is pure, and it's impossible to be perfect in a complex world. Still, each more conscious purchase is a small vote for less harm in the web. Interdependence also changes how you see enemies and difficult people. Instead of just, "they're awful," you begin to wonder, what shaped them like this? You see their wounds, their conditioning, their own inherited karmic storms. This doesn't mean excusing harm or skipping boundaries. Those are sometimes necessary. It means you hurt less when you stop taking everything as personal attack. You see that they, too, are acting from unseen scripts they didn't fully choose. When you really absorb interdependence, your motivation for practice deepens. You're not just trying to feel a bit calmer in your own little bubble. You're training your mind because other people live inside the radius of your actions. Your future kids, your neighbors, your co-workers, and complete strangers. When you heal a pattern in yourself, you're also protecting them from that pattern. Your awakening, even if small, is a quiet gift to people you'll never meet. This view also helps with guilt and perfectionism around karma. Yes, your actions matter deeply, but you are never the only cause of anything. Every outcome is a soup of many ingredients: genetics, culture, family, economics, luck. You're responsible for your spoonful, not for the whole pot of soup. That means you can take your part seriously without thinking you control everything. Responsibility, not crushing self-blame. Humility, not helplessness. You can see interdependence beautifully in acts of generosity. Give someone real attention when they're struggling, and they relax a little inside. Later, they may have more patience with their child, who feels safer and calmer. That child grows up with a slightly softer nervous system and treats others kinder. Your 1 hour of listening may echo for decades in people you'll never see. You planted one seed, but it grew in 1,000 unseen directions. Interdependence also means your suffering is not just yours to carry alone. Others have walked through similar grief, fear, and confusion. When you connect with them, something in you whispers, "I'm not crazy. I'm not alone." This shared recognition reduces shame, which is one of the heaviest karmic weights. Talking honestly, joining communities, or even reading other people's stories helps. It reminds you that pain is a human experience, not a personal defect. The Buddha's teaching on dependent origination points to the same truth. Nothing arises just because. Everything depends on conditions coming together. Your anger depends on tiredness, old wounds, triggers, stories, hormones, and more. Change some of those conditions, and the anger doesn't arise in the same way. This is hopeful. You don't have to fight your mind like a monster. You can change the conditions around it and within it, and the results slowly shift. The Dalai Lama often says, if you want to be happy, practice compassion. Not because it's morally cute, but because it fits the reality of interdependence. If everyone around you is suffering and tense, your own peace is fragile. If you live in a society that's unfair and violent, your nervous system pays the price. Caring about others is not a luxury. It's enlightened self-interest in a connected world. When your circle of concern grows, your own life becomes less cramped and fearful. So interdependence asks a simple but powerful question. Given that I am deeply connected to everything around me, how do I want to show up? Not in some future perfect version of you, but in the next conversation, the next purchase. Do you want to be another source of noise, panic, and harshness in the web? Or do you want to be one of the rare places where people feel a bit safer and seen? Each small choice moves you in one direction or the other, never perfectly, but steadily. And as you see more clearly how deeply woven you are into this living net, another layer of the path comes into focus. The relationships closest to you, the friends, partners, and companions who walk beside you and shape your karma daily. Because in a world where everything is connected, the people you walk with matter a lot. They can either pull you back into old suffering or help you rise into a new way of being. Learning how to build and live in wholesome relationships is our next step together. There's a quiet secret in the Buddha's teaching that people often skip over. When his attendant Ananda said, "Good friendship is half of the spiritual life," the Buddha gently corrected him. "Not so, Ananda. Good friendship is the whole of the spiritual life." Think about that for a second. He didn't say the perfect meditation posture or memorizing all the sutras. He said the people you walk with matter that much. Because in daily life, your karma is constantly being shaped, challenged, and reinforced by the relationships closest to you. You already know this from experience. When you spend time with someone calm, sincere, and grounded, something in you relaxes. You breathe a little deeper. You feel less ashamed of your struggles, more hopeful about your growth. But when you're around people who are always in drama, gossip, or negativity, your nervous system starts vibrating at that frequency too. You leave those conversations feeling drained, wired, or strangely smaller inside. Same you, different relationships, completely different inner weather. From a Buddhist perspective, a spiritual friend isn't necessarily someone who uses spiritual words or wears mala beads. It's anyone who helps you remember your better self. Someone who encourages your honesty instead of your self-deception, your courage instead of your fear, your kindness instead of your pettiness. They don't have to be perfect. In fact, they won't be. But they care about your awakening more than your ego's comfort. And that is priceless. It's like having someone constantly adjusting your inner compass back toward true north. A wholesome relationship isn't one where you never argue or get annoyed. It's one where conflict becomes a teacher instead of a weapon. When something goes wrong, you don't immediately look for who to blame. You both ask, "What is this showing us about our patterns?" Imagine an argument where, after cooling down, you can say, "Okay, I see I was defensive there. That old program again. Can we try this differently?" That's not fantasy. It's exactly the kind of karmic upgrade that becomes possible when both people value growth over being right. One way to recognize a wholesome friend is by how you feel about yourself in their presence. Do you feel like you have to perform, impress, or shrink to be tolerated? Or do you feel strangely free to be honest, messy, confused, imperfect, but still worthy of love? Spiritual friendship makes it easier to tell the truth about your shadows, because you know the other person isn't waiting to attack you with them later. They hold your confessions like delicate seeds, not ammunition. That kind of safety accelerates healing like almost nothing else. Of course, not all your relationships will be instantly wholesome. Some are old karmic contracts built on habits of pleasing, rescuing, or fighting. You might have friends that only call when there's gossip, or relatives who only know how to connect by complaining. Conscious karma doesn't mean you must cut everyone off and move to a cave. It means you start changing how you show up. You can listen without fueling the fire, gently redirect conversations, or introduce more honesty and care, even if the other person isn't used to it yet. Sometimes, though, the most compassionate act is creating distance. If a relationship constantly pulls you back into addictions, self-hatred, or violence, it's not cruel to step away. It's wise. Your nervous system is not an indestructible machine. It's more like a sensitive instrument. If someone keeps using that instrument as a drum, eventually it snaps. You're allowed to protect your clarity. You're allowed to say, "I love you, but I can't live inside this pattern anymore." That choice affects your karma and theirs. It may be the only thing that ever invites them to reflect. Spiritual friendship is also about what you bring to others. It's easy to ask, "Where are my supportive people?" It's harder, but more empowering, to ask, "Am I that kind of person for anyone?" Do you celebrate others' growth without secretly comparing yourself? Do you hold their vulnerabilities with respect? Or do you share them as juicy stories later? Do you listen more than you preach? Every time you choose to be a safe place for someone's honesty, you become part of their healing karma, not just your own. You don't need a huge circle to live this. Even one or two deep, honest friendships can change the trajectory of your life. A friend you can text, "I'm spiraling. Can we talk?" Instead of pretending everything's fine. Someone who can look you in the eye and say, "I love you, but that story you're telling about yourself isn't true." And you know they're not attacking you. These are the people who can hold a mirror to your blind spots without smashing you with it. They see both your wounds and your potential, and they relate to both. If you feel like you don't have anyone like that yet, don't panic. You can start by building the qualities of a spiritual friend within yourself. Be the one who speaks truth kindly to your own heart. When you mess up, talk to yourself like you would to someone you love. Honest, but gentle. When you're tempted to numb out, remind yourself of your deeper intentions. As that inner friendship strengthens, you tend to attract outer friendships that resonate with it. People who value depth recognize each other. Another powerful practice is to choose a friendship intention for the relationships you already have. For example, with this person, I want to practice honesty. Or, with this person, I want to practice deep listening. Instead of trying to fix the entire relationship overnight, you focus on one quality. Before meeting them, you remind yourself of your intention. After the interaction, you reflect. Did I live that intention? What did I learn? Slowly, your side of the karmic pattern starts to change, which often invites their side to change too. Spiritual friendship doesn't always look soft and sweet. Sometimes it looks like a friend saying, "I love you too much to watch you keep doing this to yourself." Or, "I know you can do better than this because I've seen your courage before." There's warmth in those words, But there's also challenge. The Buddha never said compassion means letting people drown while you smile kindly. Sometimes compassion is a hand on your shoulder saying, "Enough. Let's get you out of this pattern." The challenge is loving, not shaming. Community, even a small one, multiplies the power of these friendships. A group of people committed to some form of practice, honesty, and kindness creates a field of support that's much stronger than individual willpower. Maybe that's a meditation group, a book club focused on growth, an online circle that shares honestly instead of just posting highlights. When you hear others describe the same patterns you struggle with, your shame loosens its grip. You realize, oh, it's not just me. This is a human thing. One of the quiet gifts of wholesome relationships is that they help you hold your future self in view. On days when you can't remember why you're trying to change, when your own faith in yourself is tiny, a spiritual friend can say, "I remember why. Let me hold that vision for you today." They remind you of the seeds you've already planted and the progress you're too close to see. In karmic terms, they lend you their merit, their stability, their clarity, when yours is running low. At the same time, you'll sometimes be the one holding that vision for someone else. You'll be the one saying, "No, this mistake doesn't erase everything. I've watched you grow. I know this is not the end of your story." When you do that, your own understanding deepens. It's funny. Often we speak the very words to others that we most needed to hear ourselves. Karma works both ways in those moments. They receive encouragement, and you hear your own wisdom echo back inside you. Over time, you may notice that the people you spend the most time with are those who make it easier to be the person you want to become. You naturally gravitate toward those who are walking in the same general direction, even if their path looks different. This isn't about forming a spiritual clique or judging everyone else as less evolved. It's about admitting that environment matters. If you want to breathe cleaner air, at some point, you have to stop living next to the factory that's choking you. And as these relationships stabilize and deepen, another question quietly rises. In the middle of all these connections, demands, and seasons of life, how do you keep your own path balanced? Not burning out trying to be everyone's savior, and not disappearing into comfort so much that you stop growing. That's where the Buddha's teaching on the middle way becomes even more personal and practical. And that's where our journey is about to turn next. Most people think karma is only about what they do to others, but there's a huge piece that often gets ignored. What you do to yourself, not just through actions, but through the way you talk to yourself all day long. That inner voice that comments on everything you do, that judges, compares, and criticizes. Every harsh word you speak inside leaves a trace in your nervous system. It's like you're drinking tiny sips of poison and then wondering why you feel sick. Think about how you talk to yourself when you make a mistake. Do you say things like, "Of course you messed up. You always ruin everything." Or, "You're so stupid. How could you do that?" Things you'd never say to a friend. If you spoke to another person the way you speak to yourself, you'd feel guilty. But because it's just inside your head, you call it normal or even necessary. From a karmic angle, that inner violence still counts. It still shapes your heart. The Buddha didn't use the phrase self-compassion, but he taught its essence. He spoke often about metta, loving kindness that includes all beings, yourself too. If you are excluded from your own compassion, something is off in your understanding. You become like a candle trying to light others while burning itself out completely. Self-hatred doesn't make you more ethical. It just makes you more exhausted. And tired Ashamed people tend to make more confused choices, not fewer. Self-compassion is not saying, "Everything I do is fine, who cares about consequences?" It's saying, "I can acknowledge my mistakes honestly without crushing myself for them." Imagine talking to yourself the way a wise, kind teacher would talk. They'd say, "Yes, that wasn't skillful. Let's look at why and what we can learn." They wouldn't scream, "You're hopeless, just give up already." One response creates growth. The other creates a stuck loop of guilt and numbness. You can experiment with this the next time you slip into an old pattern. Maybe you binge on your phone, lash out at someone, or break a promise to yourself. Instead of launching an instant inner attack, pause and put a hand on your chest. Say quietly, "Okay, that hurt. I see it. I'm not proud of it, but I'm still here." Then ask, "What was I really needing in that moment that I didn't know how to ask for?" That question opens a door to wisdom instead of another round of self-punishment. Your inner voice has probably been trained by years of messages from outside. Parents, teachers, religions, peers, media, all with their own fears and wounds. Maybe you grew up hearing, "You're lazy," "You're too much," or "You never get it right." Those phrases can become like background apps always running in your mind. The practice isn't to pretend they never existed. That would be spiritual amnesia. The practice is to notice when they pop up and gently question their authority. A powerful tool is to ask, "Whose voice is this, really?" When you're harsh inside, is that truly you? Or is it your anxious parent, your stressed teacher, your ex? When you see it's an echo, not your essence, it becomes easier not to obey it. You can listen, nod, and then say, "Thank you for your opinion, but I'm choosing differently." You don't have to fight the voice like an enemy. You can outgrow it like an old script. Each time you don't believe it, you weaken its karmic hold just a little more. You can also practice speaking to yourself in complete sentences of kindness. It might feel awkward at first, like learning a new language late in life. Try phrases like, "You're allowed to be learning," or "You did your best with what you knew," or "You matter even when you're not productive," and "Mistakes are part of the path." Say them out loud if you can. Your body hears your voice differently than your thoughts. Over time, these new phrases start to feel less fake and more like home. Remember that self-compassion is not the enemy of responsibility. You can fully own the impact of your actions and treat yourself with dignity. I hurt someone. That's real. I want to repair it. And at the same time, I'm still worthy. This combination is what actually leads to change. Honesty without self-hatred. When you feel fundamentally bad, you tend to give up and repeat the pattern again. When you feel fundamentally worthy, you're more willing to make things right. Think of self-compassion as karmic first aid. When you fall, you don't yell at your broken skin for being weak. You clean the wound, bandage it, and protect it while it heals. Your mind is the same. When it bleeds from a mistake, it doesn't need more knives. It needs cleaning, truth, bandaging, kindness, and protection, better boundaries. Without that care, your inner wounds keep reopening and driving your reactions. You might worry that if you go easier on yourself, you'll become lazy. But look closely. Has cruelty actually made you consistently better? Or has it mostly made you anxious, perfectionistic, and scared to try new things? When you feel safe inside, you actually take more healthy risks. You're not terrified that one failure will mean you're worthless forever. That freedom to experiment is essential for genuine growth and new karma. A simple daily practice is to end your day with a brief inner check-in. close your eyes and review the last 24 hours without a courtroom in your head. Notice where you acted in line with your values and silently appreciate it. Notice where you fell short and gently ask, "What can I try differently next time?" Then finish with one sentence of kindness to yourself, even if it's tiny. You did. This trains your system to connect reflection with learning instead of with shame. Your relationship with yourself sets the tone for all your other relationships. If your inner voice is constantly critical, you'll either project that onto others or cling to them desperately, hoping they'll say the opposite and save you. Neither of those dynamics feels good for very long. As you soften and stabilize inside, you stop needing others to play extreme roles. You can love from a place that's less hungry and more steady. There will be days when the old voice is louder than anything you've learned here. Days when you forget every kind phrase and believe every cruel thought. On those days, the practice is painfully simple. Don't make it worse by believing, "This proves I haven't grown at all." That's just another trick of the old script. Instead, you can say, "Ah, today is a heavy day. I'll walk more gently, then." Even that recognition is a small but powerful karmic turning. You will also start to notice that the more compassion you give yourself, the easier it becomes to offer real compassion to others without burnout. You won't need them to be perfect, so you can feel safe. You'll recognize your shared humanity. They're messy. You're messy. And that's okay. Compassion then becomes a natural overflow, not a performance or obligation. Your inner climate of kindness becomes the weather you bring into every room. And as this inner relationship softens and heals, a deeper question arises. How do you walk this path over months and years without swinging between extremes? Hyper-discipline one week, collapse, and avoidance the next. How do you keep tuning your life so effort and rest work together, not against you? That's where the middle way stops being an idea and becomes a living rhythm. And that rhythm is exactly what we'll explore as our journey continues. There's a famous image from the Buddha's life that explains balance better than 1,000 theories. He compared the mind to a stringed instrument. If the string is too tight, it snaps. If it's too loose, it makes no sound. Only when it's tuned just right does it sing. You've probably felt both extremes in your own journey. There are days when you push yourself so hard that everything feels like a burden. And others when you let everything slide and feel empty, lost, and unmotivated. In too tight mode, discipline turns into punishment. You decide you'll meditate an hour every day. Start a new diet. Wake up at 5 a.m. and never scroll again. It looks impressive for a few days, but underneath there's tension, fear, and pressure. The moment you miss a day, your inner critic attacks. See? You'll never change. Instead of adjusting the plan, you collapse into shame and want to quit everything. The string snaps, not because practice is wrong, but because the way you held it was harsh. In too loose mode, freedom turns into avoidance. You tell yourself, "I'll practice when I feel called," or "I don't want to force anything." Weeks pass, and your only ritual is checking notifications the moment you wake up. You feel sluggish, anxious, and disconnected, but shrug and say, "I'm just like this." Deep down, you know you're capable of more presence than you're living. That gap between who you are and who you could be hurts, even if you pretend it doesn't. The middle way isn't a rigid point exactly between these extremes. It's a living, breathing adjustment to what's true right now. Some days, balance means gently pushing yourself to sit for 5 minutes instead of none. Other days, it means letting yourself rest instead of forcing a practice that that only adds stress. The skill is learning to feel the difference between healthy effort and self-violence. That sensitivity doesn't appear overnight. It grows with honest trial and error. One useful question is this making me more alive or more brittle? When effort is healthy, you feel challenged but quietly proud of showing up. You may be tired, but there's a sense of alignment, like your actions match your values. When effort is harsh, you feel smaller, tight, and secretly resentful of the practice itself. You might fantasize about quitting everything and going back to normal. Your body feels like it's bracing for impact, not opening to growth. Another way to sense balance is by looking at recovery. Healthy effort leaves space to recover, integrate, and breathe. If your schedule is packed with goals but no white space, you're probably too tight. On the other hand, if your days have endless white space with zero structure, you're likely floating in too loose, where nothing holds you to what matters. The middle way builds both, pockets of real effort and pockets of real rest. You can think in terms of seasons instead of permanent rules. There may be a season when your life is already very demanding: illness, grief, heavy workload. In that season, the middle way might mean tiny, gentle practices and a lot of kindness. Later, there may be a season when you feel stronger and more spacious inside. Then, the middle way might mean stretching yourself a bit. Longer sits, deeper study, more service. Balance shifts as you and your life conditions change. A practical tool is to design a minimum and an ideal version of your practice. Your minimum might be 3 mindful breaths in the morning and 1 conscious check-in at night. Your ideal might be 20 minutes of meditation, journaling, and a walk without your phone. On hard days, you do the minimum without guilt. That keeps the string from going slack. On easier days, you move closer to the ideal without forcing yourself into rigidity. This way, practice stays flexible, but not optional. The middle way also applies to how much you try to change at once. The mind loves grand overhauls. From tomorrow, I'll transform my diet, sleep, and whole life. Reality, however, tends to respond better to 1 or 2 focused changes at a time. Ask yourself, what is the one habit that, if it shifted, would make everything else easier? Maybe it's sleep. Maybe it's morning phone use. Maybe it's nightly doom scrolling. Start there. Tune 1 string first instead of trying to rewire the whole instrument overnight. Notice, too, how perfectionism hides inside spiritual goals. I must meditate every day for the rest of my life, or it doesn't count. That kind of vow sounds strong, but it often comes from fear, not wisdom. A kinder approach is, I intend to practice daily, and when I miss, I will simply begin again. The karmic power is in the returning, not in a flawless streak on your calendar. Each time you come back after drifting, the string tightens just enough without snapping. The middle way even touches how seriously you take yourself on this path. If you're always heavy, solemn, and severe about being spiritual, something is off. A little lightness, humor, and play keeps the heart open and the practice sustainable. On the other hand, if you treat everything as a joke and avoid depth, you stay shallow. Balance is smiling at your own patterns while still being willing to work with them. Not mocking yourself, not worshiping yourself, just honestly walking with yourself. Balance doesn't mean you never make mistakes with intensity. You will overdo it sometimes and burn out. You will underdo it and feel lost. Those experiences are not proof that you can't find balance. They are your teachers. The key is to actually learn from them instead of repeating the same cycle blindly. Ask after each swing, What did this show me about my real limits and needs? Then adjust your string a little, looser or tighter, based on that new information. It's also helpful to remember that your middle way won't look like anyone else's. Some people thrive with detailed schedules. Others suffocate in them. Some need more rest because of trauma or illness. Others need more challenge to wake up. Comparing your rhythm to someone else's is like comparing heartbeats. What matters is whether your rhythm supports clarity, kindness, and steadiness. Let other people's paths inspire you, but let your own body and mind be the final guide. Over time, as you practice this tuning, you'll notice something subtle. You go to extremes less violently and return to center more quickly. What used to be a 3-month burnout becomes a 3-day wobble. What used to be a total collapse into avoidance becomes a short pause before you reboot. This is karmic progress. Not becoming a robot of perfect balance, but a human who knows how to come home to balance again and again, even after getting lost. And as your life begins to hum with this more stable rhythm of effort and rest, a final layer of karma starts to come into focus. Not just what you do or how hard you push, but what you stop doing, what you gently release, and what new seeds you consciously plant. Because in the end, this whole path isn't about impressing anyone, it's about quietly reshaping your character, one small, repeated choice at a time. That's exactly where our final steps together are about to lead. By now, you've seen that karma isn't a mysterious scoreboard in the sky. It's the very real pattern of your choices, repeated over days, months, and years. The question is no longer, do I have karma? But, what am I planting right now? This can feel overwhelming if you think you need a total life makeover overnight, but transformation doesn't happen like a lightning strike. It happens like sunrise, slow, steady, one ray of light at a time, until you suddenly realize it's day. So let's bring it down to earth. What does planting new seeds look like tomorrow? It might be as simple as setting your phone aside for the first 10 minutes after waking. Those 10 minutes become new karma, breath, awareness, and intention instead of autopilot. Or it might be choosing one honest conversation you've been avoiding and facing it gently. Or taking a 5-minute walk outside without headphones, just to feel your body and the air. Small, repeatable actions. That's the real engine of change, not dramatic vows. One helpful practice is to choose a theme for a week instead of 100 goals. For example, you might say, "This week, my seed is patience," and focus on that. Every time you feel irritation rise, you notice and ask, how can I respond one step softer? You won't catch it every time, but every moment you do is a new karmic imprint. Next week, you might choose truthful speech or slowing down and explore that. Over time, these weekly seeds grow into a forest of new habits without feeling forced. Journaling can turn this from vague intention into something concrete. At the end of the day, write down one seed you planted, even if it was tiny. I paused before replying. I ate one meal mindfully. I chose rest instead of numbing. Don't write a legal report. 1 or 2 lines are enough to acknowledge the shift. This simple record shows your mind change is happening, even when it feels slow. And seeing it on paper builds trust in yourself in a way that thoughts alone rarely do. Remember, planting new seeds also means not watering the old, harmful ones. If your habit is to reach for your phone every time you feel uncomfortable, then one powerful seed is choosing to feel that discomfort for just one breath instead. You don't have to sit with it for an hour. Start with 5 or 10 seconds. In that gap, you're turning off the autopilot and steering the ship by hand. That tiny interruption is karma too. The karma of learning to stay instead of flee. You can treat your day like a garden map. Morning, afternoon, evening, night. In the morning, maybe your seed is 1 mindful drink and 3 conscious breaths. In the afternoon, your seed might be kindness to 1 person who annoys you. In the evening, your seed is putting your phone away 30 minutes before bed. At night, your seed might be that gentle reflection instead of harsh self-judgment. 4 moments of practice in a day is already a completely different life over time. Notice that you're not trying to be perfectly balanced in all areas at once. You're choosing a few key places to practice and letting the rest be good enough for now. That's not laziness, that's strategic compassion for a human nervous system. When a gardener starts with ruined soil, they don't plant 1,000 seeds everywhere. They choose a small patch, tend it carefully, and let that success spread. You're doing the same with your habits, attention, and conduct. Another powerful seed is deliberately surrounding yourself with reminders. A book beside your bed instead of just your phone. A sticky note on your mirror that says, 1 breath before you react. A mala, bracelet, or ring you touch when you notice your mind spiraling. Playlists that soothe you, pinned above the ones that drag you down. These small physical cues anchor your intention when your mind forgets, as minds do. Planting new seeds also asks you to get honest about your high-risk situations. Maybe evenings are when you overeat, overscroll, or overspeak. Maybe weekends are when you abandon every boundary and wake up drained on Monday. Instead of hoping this time will magically be different, prepare for those moments. Plan 1 alternative action you can take when you feel the familiar pull. You're not fighting your karma. You're anticipating it and gently redirecting its course. There's another layer here. Joy is also a seed, not just discipline. If your path is all effort and no delight, your mind will eventually rebel. So consciously plant activities that make you feel quietly alive and present. Time in nature, creative play, reading something nourishing, laughing with someone safe. These aren't distractions from practice. They are practice when done with awareness. They remind your system that peace and pleasure don't only come from old harmful habits. You may notice that as new seeds grow, some old branches need pruning. This could mean saying no to certain invitations that always leave you drained. It might mean reducing your exposure to certain media that keep your mind inflamed, or gently stepping back from relationships built only on gossip or complaining. At first, this can feel like loss or loneliness, like clearing a wild, overgrown area. But that cleared space is exactly where new, healthier connections and activities can grow. It's important to understand that setbacks are part of gardening too. Sometimes a storm comes and damages what you've been carefully tending. In human terms, that storm might be a crisis, a breakup, a bad week at work. You might slip back into old behaviors you thought you'd left behind. In those moments, the most important seed you can plant is how you respond. Do you abandon the garden entirely? Or do you say, okay, we replant, we continue? One beautiful practice is to dedicate your efforts beyond yourself. When you sit in meditation, you can quietly think, may this help me and everyone I meet. When you choose kindness over cruelty, you can think, may this soften the world a little. When you rest instead of burning out, you can think, may this help me serve better later. This shifts your practice from a self-improvement project to an act of shared care, and that intention shapes the karmic flavor of everything you do, even when no one sees it. Over months and years, your identity quietly begins to shift. You stop seeing yourself as the person who always fails, or the one who can't change. You begin to feel like someone who shows up, however imperfectly, again and again. Someone who knows how to start small instead of waiting for the perfect mood. Someone who trusts that seeds, once planted and watered, will grow in their own time. That trust in the process is itself a powerful new karma. Still, there will always be a part of you that asks, is this really working? Because growth inside doesn't always come with fireworks or applause. Sometimes it looks like reacting 5% softer than last year and no one comments on it. Or walking away from one argument you would have stayed in before. Or noticing your breath in the middle of a hard moment and not collapsing. These small, quiet victories are easy to overlook, but they are exactly the point. As your days increasingly become fields of these small, conscious choices, you may realize that the spiritual path is not separate from your ordinary life at all. It's in your mornings, your meals, your arguments, your laughter, your tears. Karma and conduct aren't abstract topics from an ancient book. They're your next text, your next thought, your next breath, and how you choose to meet them. And from here, all that remains is to gather these threads and see the tapestry they form, so you can feel, deep in your bones, how ready you already are to live this wisdom. You've just spent hours walking through your own life from the inside out, not in theory, but in real feelings, habits, and choices. You've seen how karma isn't a curse word or a threat, but a living process happening in every reaction, every thought, every small decision. You've seen that balance isn't something the lucky ones are born with. It's something you can tune, like that string on the instrument. Now, the real question isn't, do I understand this? It's, what am I going to do with this when this video ends? Because the moment you close this screen, your next thought, your next breath, your next word will already be planting seeds again. And you are no longer innocent about how powerful those seeds are. So pause for a moment and look honestly at your life. Where are you clearly swimming upstream, exhausted from fighting the same old patterns? Is it your phone, your temper, your self-talk, your relationships, your food, your lack of rest? If you had to choose one area to treat with more wisdom and kindness starting today, which would it be? Not 10 areas, not your whole personality. Just one place where you're tired of creating your own suffering. Let that be the first patch of soil you decide to tend differently. Ask yourself, very directly, what seed am I planting with this habit I keep repeating? When you scroll instead of breathing, when you snap instead of pausing, when you lie instead of telling the truth, does this choice move me toward more peace or more friction, more freedom or more tightness inside? Am I living as if my actions don't matter, or as if they're quietly designing my future self? If I met the person I'm becoming in 5 years, would I be proud to say, yes, I helped build you? Or would I whisper, I knew better, I just didn't start? I want to invite you to turn this video into a real turning point, not just good content you once watched. Choose one concrete action you'll take in the next 24 hours. A mindful meal, 3 conscious breaths, 1 honest talk, 1 act of generosity. Write it down somewhere you'll actually see it. On paper, in your notes, in the comments if you're brave enough. Let this be your first public agreement with yourself. I am planting this new seed on purpose. Then, when you do it, notice how it feels. Not perfect, not magical, just different, more aligned. That feeling is the beginning of a new karmic direction. Now, I'd love to hear from you. because your voice matters here more than mine. What part of this journey hit you the hardest? Karma? The middle way? Self-talk? Relationships? Conscious consumption? What old pattern are you most ready to stop feeding, even if it's just 1% less this week? And what new seed are you willing to plant, starting today, for the sake of your future self? Share it in the comments, not to impress anyone, but to anchor your own commitment in real words. Sometimes typing one honest sentence is the first brave act of conduct you take. If this time together spoke to you, don't let it be a one-time visit. Hit subscribe and turn on the notifications so we can keep walking this path side by side. Let this channel be one of the wholesome inputs you consciously choose in your mental diet. Every new video is another chance to remember what you already know deep down. Your life can be lived with more balance. You don't have to figure it all out alone at 3 in the morning with your thoughts racing. You can have guidance, reminders, and a community that's trying, just like you, to plant better seeds. And if you want to go even deeper into living this peace in your body, not just in your mind, the next video I suggest you watch is 20 Secrets for Deep Relaxation. Buddhist Tools for Resting Your Mind. There, we'll take everything you've learned about karma and balance and bring it into the way you actually rest and restore yourself, so that sleep stops being collapsing from exhaustion and starts becoming real healing for your nervous system. Click over to that video on your screen when you're ready to keep going. It's the perfect next step after this journey. For now, take one gentle breath. Feel your body where you are, and remember, every choice from this moment forward is a new seed.